Live from Burbank, the media capital of the world.
Good evening, Burbank community, city manager, city attorney, and fellow council members, and our city clerk. Welcome to our meeting of Tuesday, October 26, 2021. During the current state of emergency, due to the COVID-19 and in the interest of public health and safety, the public will not be able to physically attend today's meeting. In lieu of in-person attendance, the city is providing alternatives for viewing and participating in city council meetings. Will everyone please join me by rising for the Pledge of Allegiance? Please place your right hand over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Assistant City Clerk Jimenez, please conduct the roll.
Councilmember Anthony,
Present.
Councilmember Schultz,
Present.
Councilmember Springer,
Here.
Vice Mayor Talamantes,
Present.
and Mayor Frutos.
Trick or treat. All right. There will be one period of general public comment tonight. If you would like to participate, please call right now at 818-238-3335. Callers will be placed in a queue until we begin the public comment period. We have 4 announcements this evening. The Burbank City Clerk's Office is accepting applications for one vacancy on the Art in Public Places Committee for an unexpired term ending July 31st, 2022. The deadline to submit an application is Thursday, November the 4th, 2021 at 5 p.m. In addition, the Burbank City Clerk's Office is accepting applications for one vacancy on the Transportation Commission for an unexpired term ending July 31st, 2023. Deadline to submit an application is Wednesday, November 17th, 2021 at 5 p.m. If interested, please apply online at burbankca.gov/BCC application. For more information, please contact the City Clerk's Office at 818-238-5851 or email cityclerks@burbankca.gov. Announcement number 2. The City of Burbank will be hosting 2 virtual community input meetings on Thursday, November 4th and Wednesday, November 10th at 6 p.m. to discuss updates to the city's development of a 5-year homeless action-oriented plan. During these meetings, attendees will be able to provide input on how Burbank can address homelessness. To register, please go to burbankca.gov and view the latest announcements on the home page. The Burbank Police Department is seeking input from the community as part of its ongoing efforts to evaluate and improve services. The community service takes place every other year as part of the department's accreditation program. The survey requests feedback in areas pertaining to the quality of service provided by the police department, perceptions of crime, quality of life, and safety within the city. This is an important survey that I encourage all residents to please take the time, let your voice be heard of what you think around these items for our police department to know firsthand. Please participate. To take the survey, please visit burbankpd.org. Again, the site for the survey of the Burbank Police Department, please visit burbankpd.org. The survey is open for responses through November 15th, 2021. Mr. City Manager, I need to call the council to go into a short 1-minute recess. I'm embarrassed to say I just realized I have a wardrobe malfunction. So please give me 1 minute to fix this. All rise. The Honorable Judge Bob Frutos calling court to order. All rise. Happy Halloween, community. Happy Halloween, everybody. Gotcha. Trick or treat. Okay, the Honorable Judge Bob Frutos will now proceed over the upcoming Halloween events in Burbank. Here comes the judge. Here comes the judge. Okay, announcement number 4, calling all mystery solvers. Join us this weekend at McCambridge Recreation Center and participate in one of the 2 escape rooms. Will you be able to escape the zombie laboratory, or will you find the thief who stole the priceless art pieces? This event is perfect for ages 8 years and up and will run for 3 more nights this weekend, October 28th, 30th, and 31. Please register, and it's $12 per person. Correction, the registration is $12 per person. So you mystery puzzles, crime solvers, this is a cool event for you this weekend. Okay, Valley Skate Park is hosting its annual Halloween Skate Fest, filled with tricks and treats for all ages on Saturday, October 30th from 5 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Show us your best skate tricks and compete in our all-ages competition for great prizes. This event is free and it's open to everyone, including skaters, non-skaters, and spectators. Other fun activities include food activities, trick-or-treat stations, raffle, costumes demos, music, and more. Skate competition, music and more. Skate competition for participants, you must register prior to the event. As you can see, I love Halloween, trick or treat. For more information on these events and registration, please visit burbankca.gov/Halloween. Tonight, we have 3 presentations on the agenda this evening. The first presentation, I am very proud of this first presentation. The Helen Putnam Award is a very prestigious award to receive tonight. We have Jennifer Kwan, the Regional Public Affairs Manager from Cal Cities, to present the City of Burbank with this award. Ms. Kwan, welcome to tonight's spooky Halloween meeting of the City Council tonight, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mayor. It is a pleasure to be here. Good evening, everybody. Glad to be here to present the city with an award. Every year, the League of California Cities honors cities throughout the state for outstanding and innovative efforts that better serve and respond to needs in their communities with awards that we call Helen Putnam Awards. Helen Putnam was the first female president of the League of California Cities. Like many city council members, she was a tremendous civic advocate. She was a mayor in Petaluma, a supervisor in Sonoma County, a school teacher, and a principal. She had a tremendous reputation for giving her all to each of her endeavors, and likewise had a tremendous amount of respect for other city officials who also gave 100%. In her honor and memory, Cal Cities established the Helen Putnam Award Program in 1982 to recognize outstanding achievements by California cities. The award specifically recognizes innovative and excellent city programs that make communities better places for residents to live and to work. Honorees have all made a unique contribution to their community with solutions that either improve the quality of life, more efficiently deliver services and programs, or provide a new service that responds to a community need. Awards are given in 12 different categories, and they were announced a couple weeks ago at our annual conference in Sacramento. The City of Burbank received the 2021 Helen Putnam Award for Excellence in Health and Wellness Programs for Project Hope, helping others prosper every day, a volunteer program that offers essential services to at-risk and homebound seniors in the city. Before the pandemic, Project Hope had only 5 participants paired with 5 volunteers. But by March of 2020, that program had grown to nearly 50 volunteers and over 130 participants. Services provided through Project Hope include grocery shopping, mail pickup and drop-off, prescription pickup, and over-the-phone companionship. As the COVID-19 pandemic began to impact services, city staff found creative ways to connect with seniors and address social isolation amidst these new protocols and regulations. This included offering virtual classes and meetings, helping seniors navigate Zoom, and launching a new program called Phone Pals, which offers companionship to seniors by pairing them with a volunteer who regularly calls in and checks in on them. City staff also helped organize the delivery of both fresh and frozen meals and a curbside pickup program. Before COVID, the senior nutrition program was delivering meals to 130 individuals in the home delivered meals program and about 400 individuals in the congregate meal program. And at the start of the pandemic, the number jumped to nearly 240 for the home delivered meals and 800 for the congregate meal program, which is currently right now operating as a grab and go delivery system. Congratulations should be offered and given to the mayor and the city council for their commitment to recognizing this need and working with all the stakeholders, and especially for being able to pivot quickly during the COVID-19 pandemic. I want to also mention that special recognition should be given to the teams at Jocelyn Adult Center, Don Tuttle Senior Center, the Senior Nutrition Program, and the Burbank Public Library. All of them and all of you should be congratulated for your hard work and dedication to the entire Burbank community. Congratulations, the recognition is very much deserved. And now I'm to turn it over to Marcus Mungia, the Recreation Coordinator of the Burbank Volunteer Program, to say a few words.
Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you again. On behalf of the Parks and Recreation Department and the Senior Program Section staff, I'd like to thank Jennifer and the League of California Cities for this incredible honor. I'd also like to thank Mayor Frutos and City Council for taking the time this evening to acknowledge our efforts and all the incredible staff and volunteers that have made Project Hope and many other of our programs so successful. The mission statement for Project Hope has always been promote the independence, health, and dignity of older adults through compassion, kindness, commitment, and positivity. This past year, I had the privilege of working alongside staff and volunteers that fully embodied these words. Senior Nutrition Program staff found a way to continue providing meals to participants without compromising service. Joslyn Adult Center staff continued to offer virtual programming and companionship to isolated individuals. Library staff developed a curbside pickup program and a book connection program. And Burbank Volunteer Program volunteers put those who needed help first by running essential errands for many of our local seniors. No matter what obstacles our staff and volunteers faced, they always had a positive attitude, were kind and empathetic, and committed as much time and energy that they could to helping this community. It has been incredibly rewarding to see just how resilient and courageous this community is when faced with adversity. Thank you again to everyone who continues to make these programs so impactful. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Kwan, and thank you, Mr. Munguia. I would like to personally recognize the Park and Recreations Department for this award, specifically the teams in the Adult Services section. Since the start of the pandemic, these teams worked very hard to continue providing programs and meals to older population in Burbank. I appreciate your innovation and dedication over the past 18 months, and I'm very proud of each and every one of you. But we forgot to recognize the unsung hero behind the scenes who doesn't like to be out in the front or ever ask for accolades. But I do like to say on behalf of the council, Mr. Hess, thank you, because this is one of the important priorities of the council that we've communicated with you. So under your leadership, even though you're not out there and you want the worker bees to get acknowledged, I, as the mayor, on behalf of the council, want to say thank you, Mr. City Manager. Thank you. Thank you so much, our two guests. Thank you for the award from Cal Cities. And we're so honored to have you guys with us this evening, and thank you for the presentation. Okay, our second presentation this evening, we have a proclamation declaring October 2021 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the city of Burbank. Whereas domestic violence occurs across society regardless of age, gender, race, sexuality, wealth, and geography. And whereas domestic violence is the single largest cause of injury to American women from all racial, culture, and economic backgrounds and affects other family members as well. And whereas 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men will be a victim of domestic violence in their lifetime, with women at greater risk of repeat victimization and serious injury as well. Whereas 89% of those suffering 4 or more incidents are women. On average, 2 women a week are killed by a current or former male partner. And whereas many outstanding agencies in our community are working toward ending domestic violence and assuring safety and security for our families, and whereas Family Service Agency of Burbank offers many critical, important services directly to those affected, including long-term, safe, confidential housing, emergency housing assistance, advocacy, restraining order preparation, and court support. Individual and family counseling, peer support groups, therapeutic monitored visitation and safe exchange, parent training and support, social service advocacy and coordination, food, clothing, household items, intervention services, and community education, offering survivors the support needed to live safe, healthy, and meaningful lives. Now, therefore, I, Bob Frutos, Mayor of the City of Burbank, do hereby proclaim the month of October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the City of Burbank and encourage all citizens to learn more about the issue and support programs that offer services to victims of domestic violence. Here to accept this proclamation is Christine Ramos, Assistant Executive Director of our local Burbank nonprofit Family Services Agency. Ms. Ramos, welcome. It's nice to see you. You have the mic, ma'am.
Sorry. Thank you, Mayor, council members, city staff, and the Burbank community for your continued support of Family Service Agency of Burbank's domestic violence programs. FSA has been dedicated to eradicating intimate partner violence for over 30 years, and we're so grateful to be doing that work in the city of Burbank. We've all had a very difficult year and a half due to COVID, and even more so for those who are trapped in their homes suffering silently during that time. As I'm sure you're aware, domestic violence increased dramatically during the pandemic due in part to social isolation, can't get that word out today, stress and lack of resources leading to increased incidents of abuse in families. FSA has and will continue to be available to provide support. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic abuse, please know that we're available in your own community to provide assistance. FSA provides a variety of additional services to support the community as well, including counseling, prevention, and advocacy services. Please visit our website for information at FamilyServiceAgencyofBurbank.org or call us at 818-845-7671. And thank you again.
Ms. Ramos, on behalf of the city of Burbank and all the residents whose lives Family Service Agency has positively touched, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Our third presentation this evening, we have a proclamation declaring October 2021 as Filipino American History Month in the city of Burbank. Whereas the earliest documented proof of Filipino presence in the continental United States was October 18th, 1587, whereas the first Lusonois Indios set foot in Morro Bay, California, and whereas Filipino Americans make up one of the largest Asian American ethnic groups in the United States with a population of approximately 4.1 million people, and whereas Filipino Americans have contributed greatly to the economic, intellectual, spiritual, social, cultural, and political life of the United States by sharing in with their traditions, and whereas the Filipino American National Historical Society recognizes the year of 1763 as the date of the first permanent Filipino settlement in the United States, St. Malo Parish, Louisiana, and whereas Filipino American History Month provides an opportunity to promote the study of Filipino American history and culture, recognize the richness of the Filipino American experience, and honor the contributions of Filipino Americans. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Bafrutos, do hereby recognize October 2021 as Filipino American History Month in the city of Burbank, and I encourage all citizens to observe, recognize, and celebrate the culture, heritage, and contributions of Filipino Americans to our country, our state, and our community. Here to accept this proclamation is Deacon James Abrera from
Jaime Abrera.
I'm sorry, sir, please correct me.
Deacon Jaime Abrera.
Abrera. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Deacon Jamie, to be safe. I don't want to butcher your last name, sir.
Fair enough.
Thank you for being with us tonight, sir. You have the mic, sir.
Good evening, Mayor Frutos and Vice Mayor Talamatas and council members and staff. As I mentioned, my name is Jaime Abrera Jr. I'm a deacon at St. Francis Xavier in Burbank. Thank you so much for inviting me to tonight's council meeting. I'm honored to be here representing the large, vibrant, and active Filipino American community in the city of Burbank. The month of October is a significant month in Filipino American history in our nation. Just mayors indicated because it commemorates the first recorded presence of Filipinos in the United States in 1587, many moons before the first pilgrims landing at Plymouth Rock. During this month, we not only honor the history, but we also celebrate the heritage, culture, and achievements of Filipino Americans in this country.
Well, Deacon Abrera.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you so much for accepting it. Thank you for being part of our community and your leadership role in our community. Thank you. Thank you.
God bless.
As a reminder, if you would like to participate in general public comment this evening, please call right now at 818-238-3335. Mr. City Manager, do you have any thing to report out to the community this evening?
Thank you, Mayor Frutos, or should I say Judge Frutos, for tonight. I do not have any items for tonight. Thank you.
Trick or treat. Thank you. Madam City Attorney, do you have anything to report out to the community regarding closed session?
Excuse me. I'm sorry, I was coughing, and for some reason, my video will not restart. There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the public, and members of staff. Council did meet earlier this afternoon in closed session. There were 2 items: public employee appointment pursuant to Government Code Section 54-957. City attorney / interim city attorney is the position. The second was conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54-957.6. Agency negotiator, the mayor and vice mayor, unrepresented employee, city attorney / interim city attorney. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam City Attorney. Now is the time for general public comment. Members of the public may address the City Council for up to 3 minutes on any matter concerning city business. Please remember to lower the volume on your TV or computer, and please take your phone off speaker when you deliver your public comment. To participate, please call right now at 818-238-3335. Ms. Jimenez, do we have any callers on the line for public comment?
Yes, we do, Mayor. We have a couple of callers, and they will be sent to you now.
Thank you very much. Bring them on board.
The first caller is Renee Johnson.
Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, City Council members. My name is Renee Johnson, and I'm a property manager at Olive Court Senior Apartments. This complex is located at 1100 West Olive Avenue, and Olive Court has been providing affordable, maintenance-free living for independent seniors for 55 years and older for over 25 years. On October 7th, I watched in disbelief as Metro staff provided the Burbank community with an update on their proposed NoHo to Pasadena BRC project. Most notably, I witnessed the very casual and nonchalant references to the removal of the parking lanes on both sides of Olive Avenue from Buena Vista to Victory, a historic 1-mile stretch of our city. It was almost as if they had no clue what this would mean to the many small businesses within this proposed route or the real safety concerns this would pose. And to be clear, nearly 200 residents and staff of Olive Court are universally opposed to Metro's proposed dedicated bus lane, which would require parking lane removal along Olive. We support Burbank's public transportation goals or transit goals, but this is not the answer. Olive Court has been home to so many of our local aging residents and likely to many relatives of those viewing this evening's meeting. We take great pride in the maintenance services and amenities we provide our residents, placing their safety and the safety of our staff and visitors as the top priority. Given that the only vehicular ingress and egress to the property is a small driveway on Olive, a dedicated rapid bus flying by all day, every day is dangerous and an accident waiting to happen. With our senior residents coming and going at all hours of the day, Olive Avenue is busy enough as it is. But to add a speeding bus to the mix directly in front of our driveway is simply unacceptable. Thankfully, having followed this issue closely, Burbank staff has rightfully and responsibly recommended that Metro's BRC route through Olive Avenue use these rapid buses within the existing mixed flow of traffic, which will still allow Metro and Burbank to improve their public transit offerings without the public safety issues or direct impact on local Olive businesses who rely on the parking lane for customers. I strongly urge the City Council to listen to your residents, your local Olive businesses, and your own staff who all agree that removing Olive Avenue parking in favor of dedicated bus lanes is a bad idea, it's bad planning, and it's bad for Burbank. I thank you for your time, and I thank you for allowing the public comments this evening.
Thank you for your call. Next caller, please.
Our next caller is Cass Lyons.
Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Vice Mayor and council members. My name is Cass Lyons. I'm a Burbank resident for 16 years, and I'm calling in regarding the proposed redevelopment of the Pickwick property for 90 to 100 condominiums and the apparent decision by the staff of the Community Development Department that they alone have the unilateral authority to amend the Burbank General Plan to allow this project to go forward on a fast track with no community participation or City Council approval. From the moment the community members first learned that staff was planning to use the streamlined ministerial approval process created by Senate Bill 35, concerns were repeatedly raised that the Pickwick property did not have the by right residential use entitlement to qualify under SB 35. It was pointed out that there is no Burbank land use or planning documents that showed the Pickwick property as having residential uses or even the potential for it. In response to the strong concerns of the community, council members requested that the staff bring the matter before the council for a discussion, and that request was made in June. Now, finally, the item is on the agenda for your consideration. And all that time, the staff has continued to work on this project, confident that their interpretation of the law was the only one that mattered. Meanwhile, other people reviewing the proposal and the objections raised by the community, and now you have in front of you a letter that makes clear that the concerns of the community and council members were well-founded. It's a letter from State Senator Anthony Portantino to Burbank Administrative Analyst Christine Alls in response to her request for information about the senator's correspondence with Mayor Frutos about the Pickwick proposal. The letter explains that the senator went to the Legislative Council's office, the nonpartisan attorneys, and after the attorneys reviewed the project and the staff's actions, they informed the senator in Section C on page 3 of the May 27 letter from Fred Ramirez to Scott Berkey, ironically, immediately after stating that residential is not listed as a permitted use in the CR zone, Mr. Ramirez proceeds to use an incorrect citation of government code as a justification to deem the project's consistency. The senator's letter then states, it's my understanding that a correct application of the proper governmental code section sheds new light on the appropriateness of a ministerial approval for Pickwick. The combination of the incorrect government code citation and the need for the general plan to be amended for SB 35 to apply seems to clearly take the project from ministerial to discretionary, in that it first requires the Burbank City Council to authorize and approve the city's general plan to be amended. Mayor Frutos, it is clear the staff work was based on an incorrect citation of the law and that the council cannot be left out of such important decisions. I urge you to act to bring this improperly initiated action.
Thank you very much. Your 3 minutes are over. Thank you for your call. Thank you for your input. Next caller, please.
Thank you.
Our next caller is Marvalea Kornblatt.
Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Frutos and members of council. I'd like to speak to the Pickwick project. I want to publicly thank Senator Portantino for referring the application of SB 35 as it pertains to Pickwick to the Legal council for the state and coming to what I feel was an appropriate conclusion that SB 35 does not apply to that property. The property was never considered for residential use, not even in the Burbank 2035 general plan. Any change in the Pickwick property would require a change in that plan and everything that process requires. It would seem to me that at this point, council should direct staff to revisit their determination that SB 35 applied to this property. At the very least, we are back to the drawing board. The presumption that this proposal was simply headed for design review was premature. There is a new property owner that seems to have proceeded on misinformation, and a Rancho neighborhood that has, yet again, been held hostage to the threat of an ambitious development that will impact their daily living and degrade the investment that they've made in their homes and community. I'm a Rancho homeowner, and I've had the privilege of keeping my horses on my property for decades. I served on the Rancho Master Plan Committee, which established the zone list for the remaining commercial properties within the Rancho in the aftermath of the Pavilions project. It was a lengthy, thoughtful process and produced what was thought at the time to be a reasonable compromise to allow for reasonable development while protecting the Rancho homeowners. Frankly, I'm shocked that I'm revisiting this process 30 years later. At this point, I would ask council to place us on the agenda in a timely manner for the discussion it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your call. Next caller, please.
Thank you.
Our next caller is Ginny Barnett.
Good evening. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Frutos. This is Ginny Barnett. I am a member of Fire Corps. I'm a past president of the Burbank Tournament of Roses, and I'm calling to say that putting high-speed buses on Olive is just not a safe thing to do. We already have people that drive too fast on Alameda and Olive and Verdugo, and putting those buses on that area, not only in front of a senior facility where I have friends that I go pick up to take to lunch or shopping, but also across the street with a park where we have children and families consistently using the park facilities and the senior center right there. So putting buses, these fast buses, whatever, on Olive, there needs to be a better place to put them. There needs to be Alameda, put them out in front of Disney. I don't think they'll throw a fit about it. However, I just don't approve of it. I think it's a dangerous thing to do on Olive Avenue, and there should be another way that we could add some extra transportation to the city without putting a lot of our citizens at risk. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your call. Next caller, please.
Mayor, there are no more callers in the queue. It's safe to close the line.
Okay, thank you. There being no more callers on the line, I now declare the public comment period closed. Now is the time for a brief response from City Council, City Manager, or the City Attorney. Who would like to go first? Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the speakers for sharing your thoughts and concerns with us. In regards to the mixed flow traffic, yes, we have been very insistent. The council as a whole and I as an individual serving on the Metro Service Council, in regards to those proposals, there's two proposals that they're putting together to take to the Metro Board. One is still the curb lane removal of all the parking, and the second proposal is to move that from the curb lane to the second lane in the roadway. And I just told them that we were against those two proposals. We want the mixed flow into the curb lane, not the curb lane, but the second lane. Just mixed flow, put the buses in with the traffic and flow it. It's only 1.2 miles. So my point was that how much are you really going to save in 1.2 miles? seconds. So, in regards to what we have been saying to Metro staff, because right now staff is working on it before they make their presentation, I believe the first or second week of November to the Metro Board and what they're going to recommend to them. So I insist if you really encourage the two speakers that spoke on that item tonight to get on the Metro board meeting during public comment, just like what you did here tonight, and voice your concern about what's happening here in Burbank. We don't want to affect our residents. We don't want to affect our businesses. So put those buses for that 1.2 miles in the lane, the traffic lanes, and it's not going to save you that much time if you pull them out. So that's my point. And so we keep insisting local control, obviously. We want to work with Metro, and there's no question about it. They're a good partner. They have a lot of resources that are available to us. We worked with them for many, many years and done a lot of good partnership events as well as projects. So we want to maintain the partnership. We want to work in good spirit. We want to in a spirit of cooperation. But I hope that cooperation is a two-way street, not just one way. So I encourage you, once the board, once it agendize that the board is going to get that presentation, to get on the call and also voice your concern as well, as I will do. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the callers calling in. We will discuss any of the development projects when they come up before us, so I won't speak to those now. But for the Metro project, I will second what the Vice Mayor has said. I've been in those meetings, and they're looking to build something, and I can't imagine why they would spend money on a single bus lane in one direction. Mind you, that's the proposal. One direction, and then we have to flip a coin and see which direction we're gonna take parking away, and not the other side. So already it's not fair. But they want to spend money on that and not the Olive Street Bridge station, which, for my money, is far more beneficial to the community. It connects people to the Metrolink station in a better way. I have been asking everybody to voice their concerns to Metro directly. We've heard you. I mean, we've gotten a lot of emails, a lot of calls. We've heard all that. Metro needs to hear from you. So please email Metro directly on this. You can use nohopassbrt@metro.net. That's nohopassbrt@metro.net. Let them know your concerns. Tell them, hey, if you're going to spend money in Burbank, we need an Olive Street Bridge station. We need an elevator on the opposite side of Olive, so people aren't crossing the street with buses and cars flying by. It's safer. It's better use of our time. And like the mayor said, it's going to save a minute if they take away parking on one side. On one side, it's such a ridiculous proposal. So please voice your concerns and stay on top of it, because they need to hear from all of you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Anthony. Councilmember Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank my colleagues who addressed many of the points I wanted to make. But just again, to those who are calling about the BRT project, we hear you and we share those concerns. If you go to metro.net, you can learn more about the Metro Board of Directors, and I encourage you to reach out to those directors directly, including our supervisor, Catherine Barger. Make sure that she knows your position as well. And to the callers about the Pickwick property, we're going to be talking, at least in part, about Senate Bill 35 at our next meeting, so I will defer any comment on that till the next meeting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Schultz. Councilmember Springer?
Yes, thank you. I would like to thank all of the callers. And the city has made our position clear on the BRT, mixed flow, and a station on top of Olive. And Pickwick will address at a future date. Thank you very much.
Thank you, council members. And to the community that called in, thank you so much. Regarding the Olive bus route, I have voiced my opposition publicly, especially the last time we were here with the representative. I don't have a problem like with the rest of the council members as a mixed flow bus, but I do not support, and I've been very vocal on it, a designated bus lane. We're too small, and enough. I can't bring it into a discussion. The next item regarding Pickwick, I'm going to wait till the next meeting, but I did have a long conversation with Senator Portantino, who voted no on SB 35, and I just want to thank the community members for weighing in and letting us know your thoughts. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up on the BRT, the Rapid Bus project. With all that said, one of the things that we can do is for next week, we could have Mr. Kriske provide a brief update during City Manager comments, and then also provide where citizens can voice their input. And in the meantime, one of the things, if we haven't already, is we could put that information on where to provide input on our website and anywhere else where people can view that and provide their input to Metro. So we'll take care of that and provide a brief input next week.
Great. And if we can follow up at the beginning of the meeting, so I can communicate at our next meeting exactly where that website is, just to follow up. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Thank you, council members. Let's move on to the consent calendar. The consent calendar may be enacted in one motion. Assistant City Clerk Jimenez, can you please read the consent calendar for this evening?
Happy to, Mayor. Item number 1, City Council Minutes. Approve the City Council Minutes of the regular meeting of October 5th, 2021, the joint meeting of October 12th, 2021, and the dark meeting of October 19th, 2021. Item number 2, adoption of a resolution authorizing acceptance of grant funds from the State Citizens Option for Public Safety Program in the amount of $254,162.98 and amending the fiscal year 2021 budget by appropriating funds. Item number 3, adoption of a resolution ordering the summary vacation V-421 of a public service easement at 624 to 628 South San Fernando Boulevard, applicant Burbank Capital LLC, and finding of categorical exemption under the California Environmental Quality Act. Item number 4, adoption of a resolution ordering the summary vacation V-422 of portions of an unimproved alley easement of tract number 6847 parallel to Hollywood Way between Hollywood Way and Avon Street at 3401 Empire Avenue in the city of Burbank, California. Applicant is Media Studios Phase 7 and 8, owner LLC. Address 3401 Empire Avenue, Burbank, and finding of categorical exemption under the California Environmental Quality Act. And our final item is item number 5, adoption of findings to continue virtual meetings for City Council and all other city boards, commissions, and committees during the pandemic.
Thank you, Ms. Jimenez. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar this evening? Do I have a second? A motion by Councilmember Schultz, second by Councilmember Springer, and a question, I believe, from Councilmember Anthony. No question? Okay. Vice Mayor, question. Mike?
Yes, Mr. Judge, Your Honor. I just want to make note of item number 2, the COPS program. It's been in existence for 25 years. It's called the State Citizens Option for Public Safety, COPS. Program provides funding to law enforcement agencies based on population for the purpose of ensuring public safety. So this year's amount is $254,162.98. So I'd like to, can you imagine how much we've gotten over the last 25 years? A lot of money to help our police officers in regard to the various grant funding to support community outreach programs. I just want to make sure the public knew what COPS was all about. Very worthwhile, 25 years. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. If there's no further comments or questions, council members, I'll move this motion forward. Madam City Clerk Jimenez, please call for the vote.
Councilmember Schultz?
Yes.
Councilmember Springer?
Yes.
Councilmember Anthony,
Gotta unmute. Yes.
Vice Mayor Talamantes,
Yes.
and Mayor Frutos.
Yes. Thank you very much, Ms. Jimenez. There are 4 reports to the council this evening. The first report is for the adoption of a resolution to issue water revenue bonds not to exceed $31 million for water system capital investments and repayment of State Water Resources Control Board loans. Mr. Liu, Chief Financial Officer for the Burbank Water and Power, and Mr. Wilson, Assistant General Manager in the Water Division, can you please present the report to the community this evening and the council?
Good evening, Your Honor. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
So
help me
be.
God. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Richard Wilson, and I'm the Assistant General Manager for Water Systems at BWP. There are 3 main points that I want you to remember about the Water Fund. First, we have been and continue to undercollect on our revenues. Second, we need to undertake generational projects to replace infrastructure that has been in service for over 3 generations. Our cash reserves are below the recommended level. As we discuss the Water Fund, please keep these 3 things in mind as they relate to the concept of sustainability, the ability to replenish and restore balance to our water system. Next slide. Why are we issuing bonds? We want to issue up to $31 million of tax-exempt water bonds to finance up to $25.5 million for the modernization of the city's water system, and we want to prepay $5.5 million of outstanding state loans. The cost of these bonds is essentially a mortgage payment, and we are taking advantage of historically low interest rates and our AAA bond rating. Most of the infrastructure that will be installed with the bond funds will last 3 times the life of the bond, about 120 years. Next slide. Oops, stuck. Thanks, Bob. I think this graphic really underscores and illustrates the pressure that Burbank Water and Power is under. There's a lot of challenges that we need to meet. I'm talking about aging assets tonight, and that's the reason why we're looking to get the bond funding. We've maintained our assets very well, but we've now reached a point when upgrade or replacement of critical infrastructure is needed. And addressing this challenge now benefits current and future ratepayers. Next slide, please. I'm not going to go through the whole list of projects on this page, but you can see it includes many pipeline projects and these pipeline replacements. Next slide. And the bonds also include projects to various critical facilities. Next slide. The pipeline replacements that I've mentioned will replace over 1.5 miles of 90-year-old cast iron pipes that have a leak history on Magnolia Boulevard. We're also using the money to replace leaky undersized pipes, 2-inch and 4-inch pipes with larger pipes. Our standard is 8 inches to meet fire flow demands. And we also want to keep our asset replacement schedule on track per our pipeline master plan. Next slide. The Valley Pumping Plant booster upgrade is a major project that we'll be undertaking. The Valley Pumping Plant is the city's main pumping plant. It's what puts the water out into the distribution system. It's over 70 years old. It's reached the end of its life, and we can no longer maintain it. We're not just going to replace the pumps and motors in kind, because when the pump station was designed, it was really over-designed to suit the post-World War II needs. So we're going to appropriately size it for the future. And if we don't upgrade this facility, it would disrupt our ability to treat groundwater at the BOU. BWP's board also recently approved the construction contract for this project, which came in under budget, quite a bit under budget, as a matter of fact. And we expect to give the contractor the notice to proceed in December. Next slide. Another major project that will be funded by the bonds is the replacement of reservoir number 2. It's one of our major reservoirs. It leaks when it's half full. It's surrounded by a hillside with an unstable slope, and it's a constant threat to operations and maintenance. Next slide, please. Here's an excerpt from the recent sanitary survey that was conducted by the state's Division of Drinking Water. And in that report, it reads, Reservoir 2 was constructed in 1930, so it's almost 100 years old, and is still functional. However, its design is outdated, and the State Division of Drinking Water encourages the city to begin making plans on replacing the reservoir with one that meets current waterworks standards. And you can see in this photo, there's a roof beam that is cracked. Next slide, please. Another critical project funded by the bonds is a booster station, which is a critical intertie that we have with the Metropolitan Water District system. It was identified as a critical facility in our risk and resiliency assessment for the purpose of providing a backup water source. Both the electrical and mechanical equipment have reached the end of its life. Next slide. Here is our break and leak history by calendar year. We have 278 miles of pipe. About 30 miles of it are approximately 100 years old. All of that aged pipe is cast iron. In the photo on the slide is the recent main break that we had on Magnolia, a very large break that occurred on, I believe it was a Saturday night, late Saturday night. Our crews were out there late, working well into the day Sunday to fix it. Next slide. This slide shows the coming wave of pipeline replacements that will burden current and future ratepayers if we do not take action. On the left is the age of the pipe, and on the bottom is the number of miles of pipe for that age. Next slide, please. Oops, looks like we're missing a slide. Nope, that's good. We are going to be using a toolbox that consists of ultrasonic technology and satellite imaging. We use those to do non-invasive condition assessments and leak detection. We're doing hydraulic modeling. We're looking at incorporating that with GIS. We're using asset management tools and specialized consultants to help us use this toolbox. These modern tools will help direct our ratepayers' funds to where they are needed most, to budget appropriately based on more insightful data, and to replenish and restore balance to our water system in the most practical way possible. I would now like to introduce Bob Liu, BWP's Chief Financial Officer, to guide you through the rest of the presentation. This was out of order here, Bob, so I'll just go over it real quick. This is a written representation of the graph that I showed you. If we replace 1 mile a year, we're going to have a wave of aging pipe, most of it cast iron. And in 10 years, we'll have 61 miles of pipe that's over 90 years old. In 20 years, 125 miles of pipe over 90 years old, getting close to almost half the system. And in 2051, in 30 years, when my son is 38, we'll be here in Burbank, he will have 176 miles of pipe over 90 years old in his system. And this is a picture from a recent break on Burbank Boulevard. I'll just end then and just say that previous generations thoughtfully planned and built our infrastructure with the city's future in mind, and we have reaped those rewards of their foresight. Likewise, it's our duty as stewards of this community-owned utility to use all of the modern tools, the tools that I just showed you on the previous slide, all the modern tools and equipment available to us to manage and replace our assets with prudence and the standard of care that our industry demands. And now with that, I'll turn it over to Bob Liu, BWP's Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate the introduction. And Richard presented before I do that, welcome. Thank you for having me, Mayor and council members. I am the Chief Financial Officer, and I will be giving the second part of his presentation. Richard gave you the first part of his presentation, which talked about why we need to do these projects. I will be talking about how we fund these projects. And I should also note that before I get started, we did take this the bonding concept to our board, and on August 5th, and it was approved unanimously 7-0. So our board did approve this bond issuance. Now, the bond issuance, this slide talks about the reasons why we're financing. As Richard mentioned earlier, these are generational capital investments. These last, like he said, 50, 70, 90 years, right? So really, we do tend to bond for these type of investments, and about every 10 years or so. I think about 10 years ago, we did another bond issuance, and that funded another reservoir. So these investments do last for a long time. Another reason for the financing is that over the next 3 years, to meet the projects that Richard, that utility needs done, right? We will be completing a lot more projects, and I'll have a slide I'll show you that a little bit later. Another reason is that we are consistent with the citywide financial policies and the debt management policies, which basically states that we should fund major projects, major maintenance projects. And it's prudent to do so, and we do not have the cash set aside to fund these projects, and that would allow us to, right? And that would allow us to use or keep our cash balances at a reasonable level. The last point is historic low interest rates, and I'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide. Oops, I'm stuck. Okay, here we go. So this slide here depicts the low interest rates. On the left-hand side, we have the 1-year maturity for a bond, and you can see that it goes anywhere from like 0% to about 9%. On the far right, we have a 30-year maturity for a bond, and the interest rates, and this is over the last 40 years, range anywhere from 1.3% to about 14%. Now, the orange line in the middle, you see that goes across all these years. What that is the average rate. So you can see if you go on to 30 years, this last year here, it's about 5.38%. Now, if you go towards the green line at the very bottom, that's where we are today. So we're pretty much hitting the bottom of that range. So really, there's no better time to issue a bond if you really had to issue a bond than now. Well, I guess it could have been a little bit better, slightly better if you issued a few months back. But really, this is really the ideal time to issue a bond, especially if you want to have it be low cost. This slide is our capital spending, and the first 5 bars is the historical spending, and the next 5 is the projected spending. You can see that in 2017 to 2020 or 2021, first 5 bars, we're averaging about $4 million worth of capital every year. Now, over the next 3 years, these 3 bars, the 3 tall ones, represent about $39 million, about $13 million average. And you can see that it kind of drops back to about $6.3 million in 2026. So we expect that to $6.3 million, really, I guess going forward beyond that, beyond 2026, we expect that to be about $7 million per year. So really, we do need to increase our capital spending in order to maintain the assets that Richard spoke about earlier. Here we have the debt service for our state loans. With the bond issuance would do 2 things. It's going to finance new capital projects, and also it's going to refinance one of our existing state loans. We have 4 existing state loans from the State Water Resource Controls Board, and they were issued around 2011, between 2011 and 2014. And these bonds were issued for recycled water projects. The terms were 20 years at about 2.6% interest rate. Now, what this slide shows is really a savings. If you see there's 2 bars, the light blue and the dark blue. The light blue shows you the debt service, and debt service is basically your interest plus your principal payment every year. So you can see that going to, and the bottoms, the numbers on the bottom really represent years. So 22 would be 2022, and then 33 at the end, there would be 2033. So you can see that we're roughly paying about $600,000 a year for the next 10 years, and it drops off after that with the old state loans. The blue bars is the refinancing with these bonds. So you can see that the blue bars are lower than the light blue bars, and that's the savings. So if you were to add all that up and present value it, you would save approximately about $380,000 by refinancing these loans, or prepaying these loans, as we put it on the slide here. This slide shows our annual debt service. Once again, annual debt service is principal plus interest payments. On the first, 15, 20 years, you see the year and you see two bars. The bar on the left represents where we are today. So the orange is our existing 2010 water bonds. And then the light blue, once again, represents the state loans. So the bar next to it would represent the existing bonds we have, because we're not taking those out, we're leaving them in place. And then the dark blue bars are the refinancing for the state loans, and then the green bars is the financing for the new capital projects. And really what I want to show here is that for the next 18 years going to 2040, right, our debt service is roughly about $4 million. And after that, the 2010 bonds fall off, and the loans have also fallen off, then we'll be paying about $1.5 million per year for the bond issuance. Now, this slide is the bond proceeds slide, or how we use our bond proceeds. We expect to receive about $30 million from the bond proceeds. Of the $30 million, $24 million of it will go towards new projects, and $5.5 million will go towards paying off the state loan. And we also have another $469,000 for the cost of issuance. And the cost of issuance is really to pay for, the many parties that are involved, from Disclosure Council, which basically reviews your documents and makes sure that whatever you're posting to the investors is what you should be posting, the legalities of it all. And then we also have Bond Council, which will review, once again, the issuance of the bonds and making sure that what we're doing is correct and legal. And then we have a financial advisor with us too that also will review the bonds, and also they help us issue the bonds and get this lowest rate possible. And they'll be helping us deal with the banks and and set the debt schedule and negotiate. So our total use of the bonds would be $30 million. And then we also have $1 million for contingency to make it 31. I think you've seen that in the documents throughout or in our documents, it's up to $31 million in the staff report. Really, that we don't plan on issuing that $1 million. It'll be a $30 million issuance. It's just that when you're issuing bonds is a lot of work, a lot of paperwork, a lot of meetings, and you really don't want to cancel out in the last minute. So we have built some flexibility in here, and this $1 million is just really flexibility, but we did not plan on issuing it. Along with the flexibility we have is that can also shift some of these numbers around. The capital spending is now $24 million, and the prepaid state loans is $5.5 million. And I know that there was some curiosity about the tax issue that I mentioned in the staff report, so I'll just address that now. What happened is that the state loans we received were funded by a source, and if that source was a tax-exempt bond financing, well, we cannot issue another tax-exempt bond financing to replace that bond financing. That's a technicality that federal laws do not allow. So we have to get a certification from the State Water Board that says, okay, we can mitigate this by doing certain things. So as of today, as what we know as of this afternoon, it looks like of the 5.5 million, we can certify about 5 million. And the other $530,000, we'll just have to pay that out of our cash reserves. So what's really going to happen with the flexibility is that our capital spending amount will go to about 24.5 million, and we're going to lower the prepaid state loans to about 5 million. So we're going to shift $500,000 into the capital spending. So at the end of the day, the dollars would be the same. So, I'll move on. Here's a summary of the bonds. The prepayment is the loans. TIC means total interest cost. So total interest cost for the state loans, to refinance the state loans, will be about 1.14% versus the existing loan of 2.6%. And really, when we started this process, we didn't think we could actually refinance these loans because we didn't think the rate would be low enough. But once we got looked at it, once we researched it, we said, yeah, we should refinance, and that's what we've done. The terms of those bond payments will range anywhere from 10 to 13 years. The new issuance is the new money, and that will cost us 3.16%, with the longest maturity going out to be about 30 years. And I think I have a note here that says there are savings from the prepayment 382, and I did mention that earlier. Now, the debt service for the new bonds or for the new projects, right, will be roughly about $1.2 million annually. And the rate impact will be 3.3%. So by issuing these bonds, the bonds aren't causing us to raise rates, but it's really the projects, right? It's the financing these projects that's really the impact. But it will cost us about 3.3% increase in our rates. Here we have our cash balance. And it goes back from 1718 to 3031. So what you see here is in the first 4 columns here, this is where we are with where we are today. And then the next 2 bars is, especially the blue bars, will include the bond proceeds. And that's why you see them going up. But really they're restricted. So what you really have here is this orange bar. And that shows you where our cash reserves are. Now, the red line represents minimum cash reserves. So, we really shouldn't ever let our cash fall below this red line. And this green line is our recommended reserve, and that's what we really want to be. So you can see that we don't hit the recommended reserves until 27, 28. And that is based on these rate increases that you see here. Above these bars, you see the percents. And you see for the next 4 years, we do have 6% rate increases built in. And we did show this to council during the last budget presentation. And we have, then about 5 years out, we do see our rate increase dropping at 2%. So that's what we have projected at this point. However, a couple of things I should state. One, over the next couple of years, we will be refreshing our financial reserve policy, and most likely, actually not most likely, it will. This minimum reserve amount will go up, and so will the recommended amount. And I should also note that the cash balance you see here is really based on what we know today, because what we don't have in here is the drought. If the drought, continues and Mets starts raising their water prices, well, that's not built in here. So I just want to let you know that what you see here today is based on what we know today. Leverage ratios. So you always kind of want to know, is the level of debt you have, for your utility acceptable? This is a common measurement used by the rating agencies. And what this is that it's your debt compared to your plant and property, your assets, your fixed assets, right? So it's really your debt divided by your fixed assets. So what you see here is that on the blue line here on the bottom, that is the AAA amount. So if you were a AAA rated entity, this is where they average. So you can see they average about 25% debt as compared to plant. And if you were a AA entity, you're at about 45%. You can see that for the first year it will be around 45%, but then we'll start dropping back into this area between the AAA and AA rating. Oh, now that I mentioned AAA and AA rating, I should note that as of today, this afternoon, the rating agency S&P has announced that tomorrow they will be releasing our credit rating, and it will be a AAA. So that's good news. This slide here represents rate increases and actually just rates compared to our neighbors. You can see Burbank is the bottom blue line there. And in this chart, we have the 4 years of 6% built in here. So what this is really saying is that in 4 years, with the 6% annual rate increases, we will still be below where Glendale, Glendale, Los Angeles, and Pasadena is today. So our water bills are quite low compared to our neighbors. And in conclusion, we would like you to approve and authorize the city of Burbank to issue the 2021 water bonds not to exceed $31 million for water system capital investments and prepayment of water state resources, control board loans, and to authorize the approval and execution of certain documents in connection with such issuance in accordance with the resolution. And before I end, I'm sure you have questions, and on hand to answer those questions, we do have Victor Hu, which is our bond counsel, Chris Lynch, which is our disclosure counsel, and we also have PFM here, Mike Berwinger, who is our financial advisor. So I am open to questions, and so is Richard or anybody else that you would ask.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Council members who would like to start off the discussion? Okay, somebody's got to start. Okay, Councilmember Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that presentation. Mr. Liu, I appreciate the background that you have on your screen. Just real quick, I wanted to acknowledge that is a wonderful changeover that we had to put those greens into the old power station there. This is, I mean, it's troubling when we look at the numbers, the miles of pipe that we have that is aging out. I mean, it's so funny over time, especially when we're talking about from an engineering standpoint, what metals and materials was used in different decades and the life of those materials. Knowing what we know now, wish we could have done something different. But yeah, it's much needed repair. It's much needed update. I'm very excited to see this changeover. Like Mr. Wilson said, my son's going to be 39 in 2051, and yeah, if all those pipes are falling apart at that point, what is even left underground in the city, you know? And I just don't want to see what happened at UCLA a few years back. If you guys remember from the news, I mean, that was like, it looked like a full-on flood was coming into that location. So we need to do better than what the other cities are doing, and we need to get ahead of this. So I appreciate the report, and I'll be voting in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Anthony. Vice Mayor.
Mayor, thank you for the report. Obviously, there's a lot of information there in regards to the piping infrastructure within our city. And it was mentioned by my colleague, Councilmember Anthony, you know, we've seen LA City have all kinds of bursts, right? All over throughout the entire city. I mean, they're much older than we are, but nonetheless, it's rather be proactive than reactive. And when you're able to get the monies, you can be a lot more proactive. You don't have to be as reactive. And one question I had in regards to a couple of questions. How are we going, have we identified, you mentioned here in your report, there's 30 miles that are approximately 100 years old, 30 miles of pipes. Do we know where those pipes are?
Yes, we do.
So are we going to start with the oldest first and working our way that way, or what is going to be your work?
Sure. Well, we're first of all, the greatest indicator of pipe replacements that are needed is leak history. That's the greatest indicator. Age is one of the many indicators that we have. Just because a pipe is 100 years old doesn't mean it's going to fail. But it's much more likely to fail rather at 100 years old than at 60 and 70. And the thing about the kind of pipe that was put in, it's cast iron pipe. They made pipe very thick back then because it's not as strong. but the way the material breaks down, something called graphitization, where little parts of the cast iron pipe can degrade, the carbon comes out of the solution of the metal and it gets brittle. And it's very hard to predict where that is. Usually it's maybe at a change in geometry where there's a bell in the pipe that's used to stick into the plain end of the other pipe. There are areas on a pipe that are more prone to failure than others, and also it depends on the soil conditions. It depends on the traffic loading, the bedding of the pipe. Sometimes temperature also has an effect. There's a lot of factors, but when I showed you the slide about the toolbox, right? We're using ultrasonic technology, not just to gauge the thickness of the pipe, but also the relative strength of the pipe. What we want to do is we want to, with that 30 miles of pipe, we want to be able to zero in on the which of the 5 or 6 of that 30 miles do we want to start with first. So having a proper condition assessment program is key to replacing this pipe. There might be some pipe that's, this 100 years old that could last another 20, 30 years. It just really depends. So that's why we have this toolbox that we use to help gauge the condition of the pipe, to help basically target the money that we have to the appropriate place.
And your comment, one of the comments that was made was the fact that we're going to try and go in there with a bigger pipe. Whatever we're replacing, we're going to be using a bigger pipe to replace it with?
Some of the older pipes that we have are small. We've got 2-inch and 4-inch pipes. Standard size is 8-inch. So obviously that's a fire issue if we've got undersized pipes. It's just the standard that was put in, 60, 70 years ago. That's what they put in.
I stop and wonder what they're going to be saying 100 years from now. Obviously we're saying this about them 100 years ago. When they were, anyway.
Hopefully they'll be saying they're glad we did what we did today.
Well, we'll be listening, I'm sure. The $1 million contingency. Well, what is the purpose of that? Just in case? What if?
Yeah, exactly. It's just in case, yes, with bonds, and sometimes the craziness of the markets, things happen when you don't expect things to happen. And it's just built there just in case, instead of paying a premium for the bonds, you pay for a discount. So it would just give you the same amount. But in case also, so basically it's just a contingency just to give us flexibility.
So if we don't use that $1 million, how much does it cost us?
Well, actually, the way that the numbers are built in there are without the $1 million. It's really based on a $30 million issuance.
Oh, okay.
So I've taken that already out of the calculations.
Excellent. Well, once again, thank you for the report. Obviously this is something that is always discussed anytime something ruptures, not only within our city, but outside the city as well. My thought is, could that happen in Burbank? I'm sure it could, but just how long, when, and if it's going to happen, right? So hopefully when it does happen, we're prepared, and we are getting prepared moving forward. We've got some vision moving forward with our infrastructure, underground infrastructure, and that nobody can see. It's not pretty, but we got to have it. So once again, thank you very much for your report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Springer.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson and Mr. Liu, for your report. Can you please explain why it makes sense to refinance at a rate of 3.16% versus the 1.14 and the 2.6? Because at first glance, it looks counterintuitive, but if you could just explain why it's not.
Sure. Yes, actually, if I pull up my table, or I won't pull it up, but there was 2 columns. The 3.16 is really for the financing of the new projects. It's not for refinancing. That's the financing of the new capital projects. The 1.14 is the financing to replace the state loan, and that interest rate is 1.14 versus the rate we're paying now of 2.6%.
Okay, so the present value of the savings is going on $382,000.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Frutos. That's all I have.
Okay, I guess you're the last one before me there, Councilmember Schultz. You have the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. Just wanted to thank staff. In addition to the report earlier this year, Mr. Wilson, you and others were kind enough to give me a tour of the Valley Pumping Plant, some of the other upgrades that we're talking about. So I've seen it firsthand. I agree with the sentiment of my colleagues that this is a step that we need to take. And it was quite a read, but I did read the entire preliminary official statement, as we all did. And I have to say, it has a lot of great information in there. It answered all but one question that I had, which Mr. Liu, you kindly addressed in the presentation. So I'm fully satisfied, and I'll be supportive of the staff recommendation. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, I'll close up with my final comments on this. My only question I have to the staff: has there been conversation as this bond measure was moving forward for council's decision, the purple pipe? Are we going to be able, and I'm only asking because as I talk to different residents, one of their big concerns, especially now that we're in the drought, and since we're taking this big bond and, digging up a lot and replacing our aging piping infrastructure, is there any conversation to bringing in more purple pipe so the residents can still enjoy their front lawns but use recycled water instead of portable water?
Well, if we did that, you would essentially have two completely different distribution systems, one for potable water and one that's recycled. So to do that, it would be like doubling the distribution system that we have if we wanted to bring recycled water to every home in Burbank. It's just the cost to do something like that would be phenomenal. What we want to do is encourage the extensions of our recycled main as developers come in. We want to find creative ways to get the developers to perhaps help fund a portion of an extension that might bring recycled water to their development. For example, one way to do that might be looking, if a developer comes in, take a look at what was the water use prior to their development. And if there's an increase in water use with the new development, then obviously there's an offset there in terms of water that needs to be used. So that we might look at having some sort of a water neutrality situation where if we want to keep the water use neutral, depending on what the new water use might be versus what was there before, there could be some mechanism whereby we might be able to take some of that money to get us back to a neutral position in terms of water use. That could be a fund used to help extend out our recycled water system. That's something that Santa Monica is doing. In fact, I had a conversation with them this afternoon about that. So I'm going to look into that more. We're looking for creative ways to be able to use recycled water. But honestly, the demand has to be there.
Okay. I just know that as the mayor and having conversations with different community members, their biggest question is, can we increase the availability of recycled water, especially now that we're back in a drought again. But thank you for addressing it, but definitely know that it's slowly gaining momentum out in the community, that discussion. I will be supporting this evening due to the fact, I'm sorry, Vice Mayor? Vice Mayor, go ahead. Mike.
Your Honor. I've got a couple of questions in regards, one to piggyback on the mayor's comments in regards to recycled water. Are we selling recycled water to LA City?
Yes, we are.
We are. In large quantities or just, because I see that we're still putting recycled water into the river as well, right?
Yeah, we are. But we also sell recycled water to LA. And again, it depends on the demand that they have too. There's parks and schools. We're waiting for them to come up with the budget to convert over to recycled water. We have those projects on the books. I don't have the quantity available in terms of the acre feet. That's something that I can get to you. But we don't sell it. We exchange it for groundwater credits is what we do.
Right.
But
So
there
we're
are
taking advantage of.
Sure. But there are a number of projects that are waiting in the wind. We're just waiting for LA to get the funding so that they can convert over.
Well, I hope we don't have to wait too long. But have we maximized the use of of that water in the city of Burbank with our parks and whatever else, the hillside?
We have, and that's the key, is finding ways to increase its use. Like I said, it's difficult to create demand. One of the things that I've been talking about with my staff is we've got about 10 car washes in the city. One of them is at the airport. It uses recycled water. Another one is here on campus, right just a block and a half or so away at Victory and Magnolia on Kitty Corner. We've got 2 car washes there. Combined, they use 21 acre feet of water a year, potable water. Wouldn't it be great if we could convert that use to recycled water? But there's I'd say just about 1,800 feet away on Olive is where the closest recycled water main is. So it's quite a cost to get that recycled water main extended to that intersection. And then we would have to go to the car washers and say, we want you to use recycled water, but here's the thing. The recycled water has fine particles in it that potable water doesn't have. So when you do the final rinse on a car wash, there is residue that's left on the windows. People don't want to pay to have this residue left on their windows, right? So we would have to talk to the car wash owners and figure out, one would be they'd be willing to accept recycled water, and 2, how would we dual plumb the car wash to have both recycled water and potable water, and who would pay for that? So there are opportunities there, but we need to figure out how to increase the demand for recycled water and answer some of the questions that I've just posed.
Sure. Okay, thank you. One last question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Is there any discussion about creating an account for state of good repair, precisely for this infrastructure account for the water lines? You know, where you put away a certain amount per year for the state of good repair. I mean, we kind of do that with our vehicles. We reach that 15 or 20 year mark on a vehicle, we can replace it with a certain fund, right? It's replaced by a certain fund that we have covered over the years, and then when it reaches the life expectancy, we replace it with using those monies. Is there anything that we can use for a state of good repair?
Well, let me speak to that.
Yeah, that's a financial question.
Yes, we can, but at the end of the day,
Whoever wants to answer it.
Yeah.
I'm not directly into you, Mr. Wilson. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Liu.
Sure. At the yes, we can set a reserve aside for these projects, except that we've already been under recovering all these years trying to catch up. So the way you would do that is you just basically need more cash, right? So that would just be a higher rate increase you would have. So yes, by raising your rates more, you can generate a reserve. But we've kind of been, like I said, we've been under collecting and we've been catching up. So we've been trying not to burden the ratepayers of setting aside an additional reserve. But over time, we would love to do that. You saw that, I mean, for the next 4 years, just to get to our recommended reserves, we're reaching, that's a 6% increase for the next 4 years. So at some point, we would like to do that, but we're trying not to burden the ratepayers.
Oh, you got to start sometime. You got to start somewhere.
Well, if you're okay,
if you keep saying that we'd like to do it down at some time, we'd like to do it, but that time never gets here.
That's
you
true.
don't want to burden. You don't want to burden them. You don't want to burden us.
Yeah.
But you got to do it, and I mean, it's in the long run, it's beneficial to our community.
Well, we will seriously consider that.
I hope so. That. I really encourage you to think about that. I don't know if I'm sure there's other utilities that might be dealing with it. I know that Metro deals with state of good repair. That was instituted about 10 years ago when their new CEO came in from Colorado, and he started the state of good repair. They had never done it. But once he came in from Colorado, ring a bell, Don?
Yeah, exactly. There we go.
But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there and hopefully maybe some food for thought. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Springer, go ahead.
Yes, okay, Mr. Liu, thank you very much. But could you please, going back to the rates, why does it make sense to borrow money to have a bond at 3.16% and pay off the debt at 1.14%? And how does it result in a positive saving?
Yeah. I'm sorry if that's still confusing. Maybe I wasn't clear. Really, it's really two separate. You're issuing bonds for the new projects, right? The $24 million of projects. The cost for that is 3.14%, 16%, right? Then there's another series of bonds you're issuing to pay off, to refinance the state loans. And that series is costing us 1.14%. So you have two different, it's separate on two different series. So we have part of the bonds going towards funding new projects, and that cost is 3.14%. Then you have about $5 or $6 million worth of bonds funding or going towards repaying the state loans, which are currently at 2.6%, and by refinancing, would be paying 1.14%.
Okay. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, again, I will be supporting this, and some of the reasons why. Oh, yes, Mr. Liu, go ahead.
Sorry, before I go, can I introduce the fine gentleman that's joined us here today?
Sure, go ahead, Mr. Liu.
Okay, we have Chris Lynch here. He is our disclosure counsel. And what they do is basically that POS that you've seen and all that stuff that's written in there, they go through it to make sure everything's accurate and we're disclosing the right stuff, information to our investors. And then we have Victor Xu, and he is, let's see, Victor somewhere in here. Victor Xu is the, he is the gentleman that basically says, okay, all the stuff we're doing is legal. It's above board, and we're doing the proper things that we should be doing. And then we also have Mike Berwinger, who is a financial consultant that basically runs the numbers, looks at the numbers, helps us find the right bank to use. That will help us negotiate. When we issue these bonds, Mike at PFM will be there, and we'll be talking to the banks and saying, because what's going to happen is that we say we have these bonds to offer, and then there'll be investors out there saying, hey, I want to buy these bonds. And then we say, well, there's so many, there's a certain amount of investors, and we don't have this amount of bonds. So maybe we can lower our interest rate even a little bit lower because of due to the amount of investors we have. So that is their role. So, it's great that these gentlemen have been great working with us. And I do want to say thank you to them.
Okay, is everybody done now? Okay, now I can weigh in. I will be supporting this, and I'll be just real short. For the average resident that's got probably 2 jobs, 2 kids, making ends meet, coming home from a hard day at work, they would expect their council to be proactive and replace the infrastructure when needed, especially right now with the lower rates and looking at the future of our city, because our city's over 111 years old, if my memory serves me right. And all of us have witnessed through our engagement with water and power on the state of what I call readiness. And as we're getting these mandates from Sacramento for added housing, our economy is booming. We just got an update email from the city manager that Burbank is probably one of the few cities that our real estate market has actually gone up. I believe it was 4%, if I remember the report correctly when I read it, that I will be joining the rest of the council in supporting these bond measures for the utility, because the last thing a Magnolia merchant would want is having a river of water at 3 o'clock in the morning flowing in, that we had the opportunity as a council policy decision makers to, do what's right. In this case, move forward this agenda item, because this is for the future of our infrastructure, of our water. But I do appreciate all the council members' input, your thoughts, different viewpoints. Madam City Clerk, Ms. Jimenez, if it's okay with the council, somebody can make a motion. Vice Mayor?
Mr. Mayor, I move the adoption of resolution of the City of Burbank to issue water revenue bonds not to exceed $31 million for Burbank system, for water system capital investments and prepayment of State Water Resources Control Board loans.
Second.
And I see a second and a third. Ms. Jimenez, council, before I ask for the roll call, any further discussion, comments? Seeing none, Ms. Jimenez, may you call the roll, please?
Vice Mayor Talamantes,
Yes.
Councilmember Schultz,
Yes.
Councilmember Anthony,
Yes.
Councilmember Springer,
Yes.
and Mayor Frutos.
Yes. Thank you very much, councils, on this agenda item. The second report is for the consideration of farmers market parking management options. Mr. Kriski, Assistant Community Development Director in Transportation and Planning, please present this to the members of the council and members of the community. Good evening, sir, and welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Thank you, David Kriski with the Community Development Department. Staff is here returning to the City Council at your request to provide some options for managing parking around the Burbank Farmers Market, which operates on Saturdays in downtown Burbank. And I have a short presentation to give, and then I will certainly be able to answer any questions. So I'm going to share my screen right now. So, and everyone can see this?
Yes.
Thank you. As I said, council directed staff to bring back an ordinance allowing all vehicles to park in electric vehicle charging stalls that the city recently installed in the upper community services building parking lot, which is at the corner of Olive and Glen Oaks Boulevard, right near the farmers market. Particularly, the council asked to bring back an ordinance modifying those parking rules during the farmers market period on Saturdays from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. And this is to accommodate the farmers market who the patrons of the market use that lot at a very high level to visit the market. And in doing so, staff looked at two issues. First, can we do it? And then if we can do it, what would a change in policy say and have influence with our other city policies around transportation, electrification, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions? And so to answer the first question, staff looked into how EV charging spaces are managed and regulated. The state law regulates how parking for EV charging purposes is managed. Cities and the state do have the ability to establish EV electric vehicle parking station spaces for EV parking. And when they do, no other vehicles may park in those spaces, and EVs must always be charging when they're parked in those spaces. And so the EV spaces at the upper CSB lot operate in that way today. If the council wants to modify those rules to allow non-EVs to park in those spaces during any time of the day, staff and the council must modify the Burbank Municipal Code to remove that EV-only designation from those 16 spaces. And we do have an ordinance prepared if the council wishes to do that tonight. The one issue with that is we cannot restrict the non-EV usage for a particular time of the day. It's an all or nothing, and that's what state law requires. So we either have EV spaces for EVs always, or we allow non-EVs to park at these spaces anytime. You can't restrict it for a certain period. So that's the one caveat that we discovered in researching this. It can be done, but it is more broad than what the council asked for. We cannot restrict it for a specific time period. And so primarily because of that, and I'll get into some further reasons why, just to say up front, our staff recommendation is not to make this change. We do not recommend changing the BMC to allow non-EVs to park in those spots. We think it's contrary to the grant that we use to build the spaces. It's contrary to the council's policies that they've adopted around transportation electrification and other transportation policies. It's contrary to some of the marketing we started to do for these spaces in terms of getting EV users, both existing and potentially future EV users, used to the idea that we have convenient charging spaces throughout the city. And it is also, it would differ from many peer cities. We looked into what other peer cities do with regard to their EV spaces. First, and probably most importantly, the grant used to construct the EV spaces specifically stipulates that we need to keep the EV stations accessible to the public 24 hours a day, 7 days per week for charging. And so obviously changing that policy for these spaces would be contrary to that. And we think that if we were to make that change, it could jeopardize our chances for future access and grants from AQMD. So we think for that reason, we don't recommend making the change. We think making the change would be contrary to some of the city's other goals, particularly our Burbank Water and Power colleagues and their transportation electrification plan, which asks that we seek to make a goal of installing up to 500 EV chargers by 2025. As you know, 40% of the city's greenhouse gas emissions are from transportation. This is something that we're working through with our current and potential updated greenhouse gas reduction plan. And so moving the transportation sector off of fossil fuels is a big way that we see in the future to reduce our greenhouse gas reduction plan, or reduce our greenhouse gas emissions as a city. And then we think it sends the wrong signal about our city priorities with regards to electrification of transportation. And so we think that this change would be contrary to several of the council's goals and potentially future goals that the council may wish to adopt with the updated greenhouse gas reduction plan, which will be coming forward in the coming months. It would be contrary to our current EV outreach. BWP's marketing group is promoting the benefits of EV adoption, and the fact that we have these EV charging stations throughout the city is a big selling point to get people to consider adopting electric vehicles for their vehicles. We have an EV buyer's guide that we produced to help residents and visitors to the city, residents who may be considering EVs and visitors who are coming to Burbank with their EVs, to find out where the charging stations are, whether that be city charging stations, private charging stations, or other publicly accessible stations. And so we think this is going to introduce confusion if folks are trying to use those EV spaces and they get there and they're all filled up with non-EVs and then are wondering why is that, and it would be very confusing to the end user. And a lot of the third-party reporting and technical applications that EV users and EV drivers use to know where charging is and what the policies around charging stations are, it's going to be difficult to communicate this nuanced difference for these one set of parking spaces to users who are expecting EV spaces to be used by EVs. And then finally, we also think we've found that this would be inconsistent with several other Los Angeles area cities. We surveyed informally 9 cities to find out how they deal or would deal with this potential issue. 2 cities restrict access to EV charging spaces through the municipal codes. That's how the city of Burbank does it. The other cities kind of rely on the general overall state law, but they were very clear that their EV spaces are only for EVs and that they wouldn't allow non-EVs to park in any of them, and hadn't really considered anything that we're considering here tonight. So as I said, our staff recommendation is to maintain the EV spaces as is. We do understand there may be some parking management that could be done with the rest of the spaces that are not EV, because that is a popular parking lot for the farmers market on Saturday. So we are recommending and suggested that we impose a 30-minute time limit on those very convenient spaces to the farmers market, because a complaint that we heard from the council, and I think have heard from the public outreach, is that those spaces are relied upon for people to dash in and out of the farmers market, because there are some users that are kind of in and out and just getting their groceries quickly and are wanting to have convenience. But then there are other folks that like to use the farmers market more long-term, because they're browsing the elements, they're meeting people, they're having conversation, they're enjoying the Saturday. And so they're going to want to park longer. So the idea would be to restrict the parking time limit on those convenient spaces to 30 minutes, but then add wayfinding signage for those that want to stay longer to the other numerous parking spaces that are nearby and available that are very convenient to the farmers market that maybe people just don't realize are so close. And that particularly the police fire lot, the surface lot behind City Hall. Those are both very convenient. And there are really almost 1,000 parking spaces within a reasonable walking distance of the farmers market that people can use that don't have a time restriction on Saturday and could be used for those that want to stay longer. So we're recommending, again, in summary, that we maintain the spaces. We impose a time limit on the remaining non-EV spaces, and we add wayfinding to let people know that there are lots of parking options nearby when they're coming to the farmers market. However, the council did ask that we prepare an ordinance, and we can make the change to lift the restriction on these specific 16 EV spaces. Again, if we do that, it has to be for all times of the day. So we do have, as attachment 2 to your staff report, we have an ordinance that we've prepared if the council wishes to introduce it to remove the EV restriction from these 16 spaces. That would carve out an exception just for this lot. Would not change the other EV spaces, but just the parameters around these. And if the council wishes to do that, we also then recommend and suggest that you consider just a sunset on this carve out, because we think that based on the increasing usage that we've already seen here, that these EV spots are only going to become more and more popular, particularly on Saturdays. They're the highest used on Saturdays today. And so as that popularity grows, we recommend that this carve out sunset after a year and revert back to the old rules. But again, that's totally up to the city council to consider if they want to, if the council wishes to move forward with an ordinance, and you could introduce an ordinance tonight if you so desire. So that concludes my presentation, and I am available for any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Kriski. I see the first hand of Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Kriski, thank you. A very thorough report. You really covered a lot of the issues, which is always good to know as a council member. It's nice to have all the information before us to make the proper decision moving forward. Whether it's a popular decision or not, I think there's a more downside if we do proceed with designating the 16 as parking for everybody. We just jeopardize our future potential grants. There's too much of a downside going in this direction. You did mention that there's about 1,000 parking spaces available nearby. I mean, obviously they're not. We're in the spirit of my parking has to be right in front of where I'm going to go dine, right? Or I have to park right in front of the theater that I'm going to. We're spoiled. We have been spoiled for many years. But there are 1,000 spaces nearby. I mean, so just a matter of walking another 5 minutes can get you a parking spot, and you can take your time while you're looking at the various. I love the farmers market. When I go, or even when I go out of town and there's a farmers market available, the wife and I love walking down the farmers market because there's a lot of nice things that they offer that you don't see on a daily basis. But nonetheless, I think it was brought to our attention, and I think we acted on it. We're moving forward. I didn't know about all the state laws and regulations when we first started talking about it. But now that it's been brought to my attention, I just feel that I'm going to have to go with staff's recommendation. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Springer, this was your agenda, and I know you've been working with the merchants. Please take the lead.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Kriski, for your report. I shared the report with Farmers Market Management on Saturday, and they agree with the staff report. They don't want to move forward with an ordinance, and they also don't want to move forward with 30-minute parking restriction. Their goals are, they share the city's goals for zero GHG emissions at some point. And they would like to accept the offer for wayfinding to, for example, the police and fire behind City Hall, and possibly even the parking at the ASB, the little carport parking and right next to the building. And they really appreciate the report. They appreciate the time that you took on it, but they would like to, they don't want to jeopardize the city's ability to get a grant or to use those spaces. And so in summary, they don't want 30-minute restriction on the non-EV, and they do appreciate parking wayfinding signs if you could do those for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Springer. Other council members wish to weigh in? Councilmember Schultz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. I think both of my colleagues have addressed it. Staff report was right on point. To do otherwise would be contrary to the grant terms and our city goals. So I'm comfortable with staff recommendation. I'm also comfortable with Councilmember Springer's suggestion about the wayfinding signs. I think that's a fairly easy fix that would hopefully direct people to ample parking. And I will just mention on my way over here, I just wanted to walk it and test it myself. It's a really short, pleasant walk. If you park over at Burbank Fire and Police Headquarters, you're right over there in less than 5 minutes. So let's invest in the signage. And other than that, I guess it'd be a note and file.
Councilmember Anthony?
Yeah, that's fine. I don't. If the farmers market don't want to change it, then I'm okay. Just note and file.
I don't. But they appreciate the effort, the work that staff put into it, and for considering it.
Well, I echo. I don't need to repeat what my fellow colleagues said. So why don't you make a motion, Councilmember Springer?
Yes, to note and file, and just please consider move forward with the parking wayfinding and no 30-minute restriction.
And I'll second that. Vice Mayor?
That's why the no 30-minute restriction. I would feel that there would turn over people more often.
Well, it's just one more restriction that people go there, and some of them are in and out, but they were parking across Olive and they were jaywalking, and that's gone now. So they just want people to come and shop and not have to worry, because some people are quite elderly and they still drive there, but it takes them 15 minutes, to park and get out and go back. And so they just don't want to restrict their customers. They just want them to be aware of the other nearby parking, at the police and fire, behind City Hall, and at ASB. Mm-hmm. And so that's why.
So the turnover wouldn't help them, would be better for them?
No.
So who parks in those parking spots?
The farmers market customers.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I, before we take the vote, I would have to agree with Councilmember Springer. I know when I go there, I can't get in and out in 30 minutes. I talk to people, I look at different things, I take the free samples, and I need a little bit more than 30 minutes. So, it's the truth. I mean, it's rushing me on a Saturday.
Well, Your Honor, you wouldn't park there because you're going to take more than 30 minutes.
Oh, trust me, I park at the police station or at City Hall and walk. Okay, Ms. Jimenez, please call for the vote. I think we're done. I don't see anybody else raising their hand, so please call for the vote.
Councilmember Springer?
Yes.
Mayor Frutos?
Yes.
Councilmember Anthony?
Yes.
Councilmember Schultz?
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Talamantes? I think that was a yes.
We didn't hear you, Vice Mayor.
Yes.
Thumbs up. Now we heard you. Okay. Our next report is an update on the Economic Recovery Task Force. Ms. McFarland, Assistant Community Development Director in Economic Development and Housing, and Ms. Hamzoyan, Economic Development Manager. Please present the report to the council and the community.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Vice Mayor Talamantes and members of the City Council. Good evening. My name is Mary Hamzoyan with the Community Development Department. Ms. McFarland, if you would please put up my presentation. Thank you. Next slide, please. So I'm here to present an update on our Economic Recovery Task Force meetings. At the request of City Council, we convened an Economic Recovery Task Force to assist with the recovery phase of the Economic Recovery Plan. We had the pleasure of working with Vice Mayor Jess Talamantes and Council Member Sharon Springer, as well as the Chamber of Commerce CEO Jamie Kieser and staff from Economic Development, CDD, and the City Manager's Office. The task force met with various industry representatives and sectors to discuss the strategies and goals that are in the current economic recovery plan, and also to help us determine what are the best additional resources and services that the city can provide. The meetings were an open forum and allowed for attendees to express their thoughts or address any questions that they had. Next slide, please. The task force held a total of 10 meetings with 108 representatives from the various industries that are mentioned below. And these meetings were held from March through June of 2021. Next slide, please. Overall, the meetings were engaging, they were positive, and they were helpful. They helped staff really understand whether or not we were on the right path with the strategies and the goals and the plan, and if what we had accomplished so far was also on the right path. But there were also areas that we need to pay more specific and additional focus to. Some of those suggestions included assistance for businesses to hire staff, helping the restaurants attract more customers, lessening the time for our plan check approvals, maintaining our outdoor dining parklets, and enhancing efforts to attract more overnight visitors. Some of the next slides that I'll be presenting will highlight our efforts in addressing some of the suggestions and concerns that were a result of the task force meetings. Next slide, please. To assist with the hiring needs, the Economic Development staff partnered with Management Services team and the Chamber of Commerce to provide 2 job fairs and to help the businesses with their hiring. The first job fair was held as a pop-up event in downtown Burbank from July 9th to the 11th on the AMC walkway. There were more than 200 flyers with job postings from Burbank businesses that were distributed during that weekend. The second was a virtual job fair that was held on August 26th, where 22 businesses conducted interviews with 81 participants. The Burbank Employment Connection continues to offer additional resources for businesses looking to hire and those wishing to find work. Next slide, please. To help the struggling restaurant community, the City Council approved the 90-day Chow Down Burbank campaign that was run again in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, and it was intended to encourage locals to support Burbank restaurants. A wrap-up of this campaign will be presented to City Council in the future. Next slide, please. To support the small business community, specifically the business community in Magnolia Park, staff created shop local posters and distributed them to businesses in the Magnolia Park area. The city also paid for and installed a new holiday decor in the Magnolia Park area to encourage holiday shopping and visitation. To further assist this area, staff is currently working with the Chamber of Commerce to develop a program that will assist the small businesses in Magnolia Park. This will most likely require additional funding, and staff will bring this item back to City Council in the future for consideration. Next slide, please. To help restaurants in the downtown area, the City Council approved an urgency ordinance to allow for outdoor dining on sidewalks, private parking lots, and parklets in downtown Burbank. Staff worked closely with Public Works and Downtown Business Improvement District to create both communal and outdoor dining parklets in downtown. The parklets continue to remain successful, and they're a tool in allowing for customers to have alternate opportunities for dining both indoors and outdoors. And for some businesses, it has greatly increased their profitability. Staff will be coming back to City Council in the future to provide an update on potentially creating more permanent parklets and implementing components of the City Council adopted Complete Streets Plan in downtown Burbank. Additionally, to attract more visitors to downtown Burbank, staff recently initiated a series of Music on the Boulevard program. It's funded by the Downtown Burbank Business Improvement District, and what it is a pop-up performances that take place along San Fernando Boulevard and on the AMC walkway in downtown Burbank. They occur Thursday through Sunday evenings, and there are 2 hours between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. There are 6 different locations along San Fernando, and there's 1 performance each evening. We just received funding to expand this program until the end of December, so we hope to have some holiday cheer along with our holiday decor in downtown Burbank. Next slide, please. In partnership with the Hospitality Association, known as Visit Burbank, the destination marketing organization for the city, some of the following tactics that were used to attract overnight visitors to Burbank. These campaigns that you can see images of on the bottom, they're digital campaigns that were targeted for individuals that were coming in through the nonstop flight markets into the Hollywood Burbank Airport, or those wishing to go to Warner Brothers Studio Tour or Universal Studios Hollywood. And they were also sent to individuals that were looking to have road trips targeting a radius of 300 miles away from Burbank. Next slide, please. So looking at kind of our statistics for occupancy for Burbank, you can see that we were inching our way up. In July, we had a great month, almost at 80% occupancy, and August and September have softened a little more. I just want to mention that these current occupancy rates do not include business travel, as business travel has not yet come back to the Burbank market. These occupancy rates just include the leisure travel at this time. Next slide, please. Additional ways that we've assisted the community include our Small Business Assistance Forgivable Loan Program and the Residential Rental Assistance Program. So a quick update on both of these programs. There have been 92 loans that were provided to small businesses in both round 1 and 2 for a total of $1.228 million in funding. And for our rental assistance program, we've assisted 257 households in round 1 and 2, allocating almost $657,000 in funding. Both of these programs are currently closed. We do have a waiting list for the Small Business Assistance Loan Program. If there's any funding that's left, we should have this program completely done by the end of the year. Next slide, please. So what's next? Continue to connect with the task force meeting attendees to obtain further feedback as needed. We would do that most likely through surveys and sending out surveys to them in the future. We would make sure that we include the attendees on our informational emails regarding the city's ongoing efforts for COVID-19 recovery updates and resources, ensure that they're already getting that information as well. And then we'll continue to commit to improving our customer service, our permitting timelines, and streamlining and updating our processes. Next slide, please. Finally, looking ahead, as I mentioned, attendees were thankful and appreciative of the city's efforts to engage the community in the recovery process. The discussions were hopeful and positive, and validated that we were on the right path with the recovery plan to mitigate, respond, and recover from the pandemic. For some reason, for some industries, it's going to definitely take longer to recover than others. And we're going to continue on a local, state, and federal level to support necessary items as they come down the pipeline to achieve a certain level of normalcy. And again, I just want to thank Vice Mayor Talamontes and Councilmember Sharon Springer for attending all 10 of those meetings, and it was a pleasure working with both of you on the task force. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hamzoyan. I would like to first start with the Vice Mayor and concurrent with Councilmember Springer, if you can update the council on some of the highlights of your task force meetings.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank Mary and her staff, obviously, and the Chamber CEO, Jamie Keyser, for their partnership. They were very helpful throughout these 10 meetings, and they were able to gather up participants to participate in this project. Special shout out to the Chamber's Burbank Young Professionals, very engaged, very supportive, moving forward. One of the things that you can see in the report, there were over 1,500 invitees, 1,500. And out of those 1,500, only 108 attended. So, we were doing everything we could to do the outreach to the city with Mary and her staff, and through the chamber with Jamie and her staff. But as you can see, 1,500 invited, only 108 attended. So it's something new. Obviously, we were trying to reach out to the most people possible. but you can see only a few attended. And just moving forward, one of the biggest concerns now that we were made aware of is not able to hire people. Not enough people are available to hire to do the work. And these restaurants require, obviously, all the businesses require some type of staffing. Obviously, you can't open your doors if you don't have proper staffing, because people, if they come once and they have a bad experience, they're not going to come back again. And word of mouth, it's one of those things that happens. So it's being able to hire, having people available. There's some people that are not willing to work for whatever reasons, and I've been hearing that through the newspapers, through the news articles. Businesses are having problems opening their doors or maintaining their doors open because of the lack of staff. But other than that, I think we made a good effort. We addressed a lot of the areas of concern. All the majority of participants here in Burbank, the organizations, they were invited, and we were hoping that we'd get more participants, but you don't know until we get the results. So anyway, that's all I've got to add. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Springer? Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Springer?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Ms. Hamzoyan, for all you've done for your staff and for Ms. McFarland, for the meetings. And what was significant to me was the community outreach part of it, outreach to our business community, and hearing firsthand the challenges that they face. And really, the staffing problems have just stymied them moving forward with opening their doors. And you can still see it, for example, on San Fernando Road, with the help wanted signs up. So for me, I am encouraged in and inspired by the resilience of our Burbank merchants and the importance of continuing to helping them thrive and survive coming out of the pandemic. So thank you, Ms. Hamzoyan and Ms. McFarland, and for the Economic Recovery Task Force.
I'd like to call on Councilmember Schultz, as I know this was important for you at the beginning of the year, this Economic Task Force. If you have any questions or like to take the discussion, please go right ahead. Councilmember Schultz.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just wanted to thank all of council for supporting the proposal when it came forward. A special thank you to the Vice Mayor and Councilmember Springer and staff for having these meetings. I do have a set of questions. I'll try to run through them, but I just wanted to note that to me, it clearly seems like a productive use of time. It seems like there were a lot of great takeaways, and I'm confident that staff will continue to work, reaching out to these stakeholders and working on everything that's detailed in the report. So I'm going to kind of track the report starting on page 3, just if folks want to follow along, you don't have to. But first thing I just wanted to note is when we were talking about some of our recovery efforts for restaurants, one thing that was omitted that I was really proud of is that the council also adopted an urgency ordinance capping third-party delivery fees. And from the restaurant owners and operators that I've spoken to, that did provide some meaningful relief. So just another highlight, shout out for work that this council has accomplished with staff help. The next question I had was the Chow Down Burbank marketing campaign. I understand that that's now done, and I'm just wondering, do we have any metrics of success? I mean, it was a sizable investment by the city, and I'm just wondering, how did it do? I mean, I saw the mayor at the Chow Down events, which was great. I saw a great social media presence, but is there any data to show us how successful it was?
So I'll take that question. We are working with the chamber right now on the wrap up of that campaign. It got started off a little slower than we anticipated. So it did end in September, but I think they extended it a little bit further beyond September and kind of still promoting the messaging, which was to support our restaurants. So we're compiling the data and the metrics right now. We have digital metrics because the city also paid for a digital campaign that went above and beyond the local outreach of the campaign. So we have that in place in terms of the reach and the impressions and how many people clicked on the website. And I know that they have those impressions on a local level as well. I think they're still trying to compile the data of how well the restaurants did. And it's difficult because not all of the restaurants joined at the same time. So it's difficult to kind of get the metrics of how well they did when the campaign started as opposed to a month into the campaign. Because again, each restaurant, I know that they had challenges trying to get the restaurants to kind of come on board and join the campaign. They literally had to have ambassadors go inside and do the work for the restaurants. But once they were up and running, I know that it was a very positive campaign for the restaurants and the exposure that they were able to obtain. So we'll be bringing back a full report with the Chamber of Commerce and tag teaming on that effort to City Council, but that's just a little bit of insight for right now.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for the update. Next question I had was, I understand from the meeting with the Chamber and Burbank Young Professionals that the takeaway from that meeting is staff is now looking at permits, permit types that could be reviewed over the counter and fast tracked. And I know in the report you mentioned that that's something staff is working on. Does staff have a timeline for how soon that might be back before council?
We would really have to ask our partners, and maybe Mr. Prescott might have an update. Do you want to step in?
Yes. Mayor Frutos, members of the City Council, Patrick Prescott, Community Development Director. One of the things the council will be seeing soon is the first phase of our improvement to the single family development standards and process that was reviewed by the planning board last night. So you'll be seeing that before the end of this year. And then early next year, you'll be seeing the two major specific plans, the Golden State specific plan and the Downtown Transit Oriented Development specific plan that will address some of these issues about streamlining and permitting.
Thank you, Mr. Prescott. And I just want to...
I'm sorry, may I additionally say, I'm sorry. We are in the process of recruiting an additional plan check engineer that the council funded in the 21-22 budget, and we have completed the recruitments for the new principal planner position and associate planner position. So thank you again, City Council, for that, and we'll be ramping up and hopefully knocking things out a little more quickly.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. And I think on that note, Mr. Prescott, this might be another one for you. I don't know. But towards the end of that section about Burbank Chamber of Commerce and Burbank Young Professionals, there was discussion about the City Council considering for adoption in early 2022 some new regulatory changes that might apply to commercial areas. Can you just give us a taste, a preview of what kind of regulatory changes is staff contemplating at this point?
Probably in the specific plans that I mentioned. The council adopted an urgency ordinance regarding alcohol sales downtown. We don't want to give away the farm and make things too loosey-goosey, but where a regulation seems unnecessary and we can facilitate economic development and the growth of small businesses particularly, we want to eliminate some of that regulation and speed up the process.
Fantastic. And I think we all share that sentiment. The thing I keep hearing from the business community is Burbank's a wonderful place to do business, and we have to be protective of our community. But if there are things that we can do to speed it up just a little bit, make it reduce those barriers, I think there's common ground there for all of us to get behind. So really glad to hear that. Turning to the Magnolia Park Merchants Association, I understand that the chamber might be working on some sort of program to assist small businesses in Magnolia Park, and there might be a proposal coming at a future council meeting. I was just wondering if you could give us a little bit more information on that, because I wasn't fully clear from reading the report.
So I can jump in on that one. So economic development staff has been working with the Magnolia Park Merchants Association for several years. We've been funding their cleanup for their events for the Magnolia Park Night Out, as well as the Holiday in the Park cleanup events that they have annually. And we're also work very actively to market and promote Magnolia Park as a destination through our efforts with Visit Burbank. So we definitely do help that small business district, help them nurture, help them grow, help market and promote that area. So there is definitely a Magnolia Park Merchants Association. It does represent, I believe, currently 40 to 50 of the businesses that are in the area. There's a much larger group of individual businesses that are in that area, upwards of about 400. So when we do market and promote the area, we make sure from an economic development perspective that we are assisting the entire area, including all of the merchants and all of the businesses, as much as we frequently can. There's needs and desires of the business community there. They would like to have the amenities and the services that we have here currently in downtown Burbank. And they also understand that those are funded by the property owners in downtown Burbank as well. So there really needs to be a mechanism that's put into place to address the larger needs of all of the businesses in Magnolia Park, which includes some form of maintenance, some form of outreach for homeless assistance, maybe ambassadors, just like we have in downtown or Street Plus. There needs to be larger discussions with all of the businesses in the area to really hone in on what their needs are. And that's really what we hope to achieve, working with the Chamber of Commerce and putting together a program in place and coming back to City Council and asking potentially for additional funding for that area.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Emzoyan. Turning next to the section entitled Executives and Business Developers, they were talking about some of the barriers to creating housing and specifically affordable housing. Just one question. One of the takeaways I noted in the report was parking requirements. It seems like from the meetings, one of the takeaways was if there was a way to reduce parking requirements in exchange for added public benefits, that might be something that would speed up the process. I know this council took a position against Assembly Bill 1401, which I believe is stalled in the legislature. So can you just tell us a little bit about what is, are we going to be considering that suggestion moving forward? Is there anything in the pipeline about revisiting parking minimums?
Mr. Prescott, did you want
Yep.
to do that?
Yep, happy to. Hello again. Yes, those are things that will be options to consider in the specific plan updates, for sure. It makes sense in a kind of mixed-use, walkable environment where people are parking once and maybe doing multiple things, or they walk more because they live in a more compact, walkable neighborhood like downtown Burbank. So those will be some things we can consider early next year.
Okay, thank you. And I just have a quick question on downtown Burbank, just one. I understand that there seems to be widespread support for making those temporary parklets permanent. Do we have a timeline for when that might happen?
Yes, we're actually working internally with our transportation division as well as our public works department to discuss options for the downtown area. We'll be coming back to City Council early next year with a program and a timeline in place. But prior to that, we really want to do outreach to all of the property owners and the merchants in downtown to ensure that making these parklets more permanent and implementing some of the complete streets initiatives that we have is really what the community wants in that area. We've previously done surveys to the downtown merchants as well as residents as well as visitors in the area, asking them if they liked the current configuration with the hybrid approach, still having parklets while still maintaining parking. And that seems to be what the community really supports in that area. So we're moving forward with that initiative. We've actually had just a couple of businesses reach out to us and say they want to fund the infrastructure to put in more permanent parklets in place. But we would rather come back to the City Council with a plan that's been vetted with the timeline that we've discussed with the rest of the property owners and the merchants in the area. So we're hoping to bring that back early next year.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Mayor, I am nearing the end. Just two more quick topics.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask about the Small Business Assistance Program, which I think is a point of pride for the entire council. So if I heard correctly, the process is closed. There may or may not be more funding, or another round later. I'm just curious, when we say the process is closed, does that mean that all the applicants have actually received the assistance funding, or is that process still playing out?
There may be some lingering loans that haven't funded yet, but they've been approved for funding. So when we send our approval, there's a process that we go through when we work with the California Community Economic Development Association to fund the loans. When we approve them on our end, it takes a certain number of days for them to transfer the funds into the accounts. So there may still be some lingering loans that haven't fully been funded, but we've now approved 92 of those small business loans between round 1 and round 2. Going back and forth, they're still looking at the waiting list. So if you recall early on, we received over 368 applications. So we did have to close the process rather quickly. And then we just added a waiting list to ensure that if there was additional funding in the future, or if there were opportunities during the process, that we were able to pull people from that list. So the program is closed. However, there's still some activity that's occurring. We hope to have that completely done by the end of the year.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then finally was the rental assistance program. So that program is closed as well. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And where are we at? Have we exhausted all of the funding that was allocated to that?
Yes, I believe we have exhausted all of the funding for that program as well.
So my last question, and then I'm going to turn it over to my remaining colleagues, is, and I'm specifically asking about the rental assistance program because, the eviction moratoria, have lifted. As you as staff, are you seeing a continuing need or demand, for ongoing assistance above and beyond what we've already allocated?
We are currently not seeing as much demand as we used to, just based on the landlord-tenant, the number of people that are attending those meetings. We've actually seen those decline, which is probably the best indicator that we have, telling us what those economic situations are. And so we will continue to monitor that and see how that goes in the coming months, particularly now since a lot of the eviction moratorium have expired.
Thank you, Ms. McFarland, and thank you again to the entire task force. Appreciated the update. Great work.
Thank you, Councilmember Schultz. Councilmember Anthony, would you like to weigh in with your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, just one quick comment. I know the vice mayor was disappointed we only got 108 people involved, but I can't remember the last time we had a community engagement where over 100 people showed up. I think that's an admirable number. I think we got a lot of heads in the room, and I think it's not. I don't think it's a number to be disappointed in. If we got over 100 people on everything that we wanted the community's input in, I think we'd have a much more cohesive city than that. So I think it's good, and I think we should keep pushing for more community engagement.
Is that it, Councilmember Anthony?
That was it. I think it's great. The report, I love what we're doing. This is fantastic.
All right, I want to make sure I didn't cut you off. Okay, I'm sorry, Vice Mayor?
Yes, just a response to Councilmember Anthony's. You got to remember this was 108 over 10 gatherings or 10 meetings. So, it's you get a little disappointed. You see more. You want to see more of the numbers, greater numbers to take advantage of all this information, and we can take advantage of what's being out there, what the worries are out there. But yeah, we'll try again next time, and we'll get 200, 300. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, this is a note and file, so there's really no action, but I do have a couple questions. So, Ms. Hamzoyan, in talking about the permanent parklets in downtown, in your conversation with the downtown merchants, the PBID, is there any conversation to kind of beautify those parklets instead of kind of looking at the cement barriers in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So making them more permanent would include having a raised deck that's at the same level as the sidewalk, adding railings potentially, maybe a canopy, making them absolutely look nicer. Again, for a lot of these businesses, this is an extension, an opportunity for them to extend the indoors, outdoors. A lot of them don't have the ability for outdoor dining or have limited space. So they truly do want to beautify them and make them their own. We do have some restrictions that they do have to follow with the canopies and heaters inside the canopies. So we will definitely work with them. I think the intent for us would be to create a prototype that the PBID would like, and then use that as a design format for all of the parklets in the area, because we do want them to look nice and we do want them to look cohesive.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Springer.
Thank you. Ms. Henzoyan, this just came up. Somebody asked me about it on Saturday, and they live behind Burbank Boulevard next to somebody who's converted the back parking lot to dining. Is there a potential of parklets on Burbank Boulevard to move them out from the back to the front?
We currently don't have a process in place for outdoor parklets in any other areas that I'm aware of other than in downtown Burbank. If you recall, we initiated the parklets through an urgency ordinance that City Council approved. So if City Council would like to extend that ordinance for parklets outside of the downtown area, that's definitely something that Council can determine. But currently, I believe the parklets are only for the downtown area. We've expanded the outdoor dining for parking lots and sidewalks on a citywide scale, but the parklets are for downtown. Yes, Mr. Prescott, please.
I was just going to say what you said, that they can get a permit for sidewalk dining.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, some of the back, the back parking lot infringe on the residential neighborhoods. So that's why I bring it up. It just came up this past weekend. And okay, thank you.
We recently had a request from a similar resident that was in the Magnolia Park neighborhood. And when they spoke to the business and just asked them to kind of, end their outdoor dining at a reasonable time, the business was very amenable to working with them. So maybe that would be a suggestion that the resident, if there's a concern with noise, that the resident maybe talk to the business owners. I think they're willing to work with the community, understanding that they're up against a residential neighborhood.
Okay, but there's the possibility of the sidewalk permit.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to my next question. You talked about the spotlighting Warner Brothers Studio Tour and Universal's. Does the Hotel Association, working with Universal Studio, still provide that benefit that if you're staying in a Burbank hotel, you buy your tickets to the hotel and you can get in an hour early? Is that still available for our folks that stay in our hotels?
The partner program is still there, but Universal removed the hour early admission, unfortunately, as a perk. Yeah, we were extremely bummed with that when they removed it, but the partnership is definitely still there. As you know, Universal just went back in operation earlier this summer. So we're gearing up with the Hospitality Association to re-up our contracts with them. It's a great added benefit for all of our hotels. We currently have 10 hotels in that partner program. And basically what that means is if I'm a resident of the city or anywhere else and I'm looking to come to Universal Studios, I can go on their resorts website and pull up 10 of Burbank's hotels where I can stay because we're in such close proximity to Universal Studios. So that's been a great partnership that we've had with Universal Studios, and it's really made Burbank a destination for those travelers coming to Universal.
Outstanding. Thank you. Getting back to Magnolia Park as our liaison of economic development, any thought on the parade ever coming back? I do get a lot of questions from time to time from residents that would like to see the parade back.
Which parade are you referring to?
We usually had a Burbank parade down Magnolia Boulevard in April to celebrate, our city, our kids, our different cultures, and just showcase its people.
Burbank on Parade?
Burbank on Parade.
Oh, Burbank on Parade. Oh, I think there was another organization that was in charge of that. I believe it's called Our Burbank. So I'm not sure if that's the organization that was coordinating the Burbank on Parade. Ms. McFarland, maybe you're aware.
I'm not sure who was coordinating that, but I'd like to just say that one of the things that we are looking at that Ms. Hamzoyan talked about earlier is what do we do with Magnolia Park? How can we assist them better? And what does that whole community there want? And so as we bring back that new plan for you, that'll be some of the things that we're looking at. And if a parade is one of the ones, that gets good results and we're told, yes, bring it back, then that'll be something that we can include in the future.
So then what happens to the money that the council allocated for Burbank on Parade every 2 years? What happens to that money?
It would come out of the general fund, and if we don't use it, I believe it would go back into the general fund.
Okay. Then the next question is, Holiday in the Park, are we scheduled to have one this year? That's usually put on by the Merchants Association?
The Merchants Association notified us that they will not be having a Holiday in the Park event this year. I guess they were kind of late in the game in getting some fundraising for the event. As I mentioned, the city does pay for the street closure of that event, as well as the cleanup for after the event. And the Merchants Association typically has paid for the coordination of the event. So they've decided not to do that this year, and that's why we wanted to make sure that we do again install the holiday decor that the city purchased for them last year. We purchased 7 new holiday swags that go across the street in Magnolia Park. And the Merchants Association was supposed to pay for the installation of those swags this year, but again, I guess due to lack of fundraising events and the city, we have put in the allocation to pay for the installation of those swags again this year, so that there will be holiday events. We'll also work with them to encourage them to maybe do a Magnolia Park night out instead of a Holiday in the Park, if that would be something feasible for their group to do in the holidays. Okay,
well, thank you very much for the update on that one. And then my final one actually piggybacks with Councilmember Springer. I am in support of making the parklets permanent, but the only toughness that I have is that I want to make sure to be fair to all the restaurants in the city. So if we already have a restaurant that's set up in their parking lot, that as we move forward with this in a future agenda item for council consideration, that we have to include these other restaurants that are using outdoor dining, because it goes back to one thing you stated, and even Councilmember Schultz brought it up, and that's that it is improving basically the number of folks that can eat at the restaurant at any setting, and most important, it's helping their business come about. So I would hate that we give permission for parklets in the downtown because they're well organized and it's a downtown P-bid, but we still have to think about including folks outside the P-bid to be fair to all the restaurants. And if they butt up into a neighborhood, then let's work on a different rule or ordinance to support the business and the tranquility of the community and the parking issues. But I would hope when this comes back in the future for council's discussion, is that there is a plan to also support restaurants outside of the downtown, because it would be unfair. But that's enough said, because it's note and file. Councilmember Schultz.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, just really quick question and a comment. So question for staff, I see on the agenda forecast, December 7th, we're supposed to be taking up an extension of urgency ordinance for outdoor dining. Would that be an appropriate opportunity to revisit this issue?
I would defer that to our city attorney.
Madam City Attorney?
If I'm sorry, outdoor dining, the expansion, the continuation of outdoor dining is a little bit different, because that's what we were just saying. That's already throughout the city. If the city council wants to talk about parklets, I'm not sure when that's coming back, or if Simone can tell me, and if it's not right away, then you can ask for an agenda item to have it, so you can have a discussion about where parklets may or may not be. And I think it'd be important, one of the big players with that too is, Public Works, because it's in the public right of way, especially the streets. So I know there's always issues around all of that and where we can and may be able to do that. So, but the parklets is sort of separate from the outdoor dining. And if you like it to come back, I'm not sure if there was a plan to bring parklets sooner, or if the council is. And so I see Mr. Prescott wants to say something.
Yes. We do not have a plan to bring back a report on parklets citywide. That hasn't been part of the discussion up till now. It's been in downtown, and then as Ms. Albano mentioned, in parking lots and so on. So yeah, so currently not a plan to bring that back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council members, if we can close this agenda item. Go
I
ahead,
just had
Councilmember
one-
Schultz.
I'll be very quick, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment to our liaisons to the chamber, you and the vice mayor. Since it sounds like the chamber is really invested in supporting Magnolia Park, perhaps if there are further discussions about Burbank on Parade, perhaps that's something the chamber would want to support and bringing back. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, let's close out this agenda item. It's only a note and file. There's no action. Let's go on to the final report of the evening. The last report is a request to consider writing the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees Union and Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers Union a letter respectfully encouraging the unions to come to a quick and fair agreement. Ms. Viviana Garzon, Administrative Analyst in the City Manager's Office, please present this report, and good evening and welcome to our meeting. And guys, and ladies, be gentle. It's our first meeting with us.
Good evening, Mayor Frutos, Vice Mayor Talamantes, and members of the City Council. Viviana Garzon, Administrative Analyst in the City Manager's Office.
There's no audio, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, thank you. IT, we need sound.
Test, test. Good? Okay.
The
Should I start over
judge
again?
has spoken.
Okay, we'll start over again. Good evening, Mayor Frutos, Vice Mayor Talamantes, and members of the City Council. Viviana Garzon, Administrative Analyst in City Manager's Office. Per Council Member Anthony's request at the October 5th City Council meeting, I am here tonight to present a first step report for Council consideration of writing a letter to the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, commonly known as IETSE, and Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, or AMPTP, urging them to work together on reaching a fair and timely agreement. As the media capital of the world, the entertainment industry is the backbone of our Burbank community. Thousands of the members of these two unions work and or live in Burbank. With many productions restarting after a full year of hiatus due to the COVID-19 pandemic, a strike could be problematic for our city. As of this afternoon, the IETSE union is on phase 1 of a 4-phase process to reach the contract ratification vote. A voting date has not been set yet. Due to the complexity of this ratification process and an unknown date of agreement, City Council can direct staff in one of 3 ways. Note and file this report, come back for a second step, or in the interest of time, forego the second step in the additional agenda item process and direct staff to prepare and send a letter signed by all 5 council members to IETSE and AMPTP, respectfully encouraging a timely and fair resolution of their negotiation. Thank you for your time, and I can answer any questions you may have.
Councilmember Anthony, this is your agenda. Please take the lead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that very short report. I know it's not too much on our plate right now, but obviously we are worried that if negotiations fall apart and there is a work stoppage or a strike, that is going to be devastating to the local economy. In 2007, the writers' strike lasted for a few months, and they estimate it was, I believe, about 14 weeks. UCLA estimated there was about $1.2 billion worth of industry loss during those 14 weeks. That definitely hit Burbank. And I would hate to see something like that happen. So, I mean, there have been members of Congress, there were other cities that have written letters. Ours comes at a very specific time that's unique because the deal has already been negotiated. What we're waiting for is ratification from the union. So what I'd like to do, if the council would join me in this, is to write 2 different letters, one to the Alliance of Producers and the other to the IETSE union, and basically hold off on sending it till after we find out what happens with the negotiations. And basically, if the negotiations pass, then we don't need to send the letter. But if for whatever reason the union members vote down the current deal and they have to go back to the negotiating table, then we could send the letters to the two groups and hope for a quick and speedy return on that without a strike.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Well, if that's a motion by Councilmember Anthony, I'd second that motion.
So moved.
Any other council, before we make a motion, let's wait till I hear from the other council members. Councilmember Schultz or Springer, would you like to weigh in with your thoughts? Councilmember Springer?
Yes. I feel we've received one email on this from a member of IATSE, and he advised us or urged us not to send a letter because they've reached a resolution and now it just needs to go to a vote. And so this member of IATSE said it wasn't really necessary at this point. And so I feel at this point, it's interference in the process that they've agreed to. And so that's where I am. I don't feel like it's, I feel like it's interfering with their process at this point.
Councilmember Schultz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hear Councilmember Springer's comments. I don't know if I agree that it's interference, but what I would share is that Councilmember Anthony, I think the intent is certainly, it's well-meaning. But I suppose where I'm kind of hanging up is we're going to vote to essentially draft a letter that we may not ever send. To me, that just seems inefficient. It would almost seem better that we just bring this back up at a later date if and when negotiations fall through, and just allow that process to play out. I fully support what you're trying to do. I get exactly where it's coming from, and it's a good place. But to me, it just seems inefficient to vote to essentially draft a letter, which is staff time and resources that never goes anywhere. So I'm kind of with Councilmember Springer on this one, albeit for a slightly different reason.
Go ahead, Member Anthony.
Yeah, no, I hear those concerns. Honestly, I wanted to just get it done now to save a second step, but I'm more than comfortable putting in some direction to the letters and then not drafting it and having it bring back if negotiations fall through. I think that's fine, because if we put it together and they close the deal, then it's a waste. So yeah, I can understand that. So yeah, I have no problem putting this to a second step and having staff just monitor the outcome of the vote and then bring it back if the deal was not met.
Vice Mayor, you're going to weigh in?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and remove my second, because you're talking about the done deal. If it's a done deal, then it's a done deal. So yeah, I would remove my second.
Okay, so then motion dies for lack of second. Councilmember Springer?
I agree with Councilmember Schultz that just to let this process go through, just let the process work its way through and see what happens. And I know we all hope for just the best outcome possible for, the parties involved.
Well, I wouldn't want to stay out of it completely. We do have a material investment on the industry here in Burbank, and if we don't speak up like so many other organizations have, I think we're missing an opportunity. And our letter will go on the pile with everybody else who's encouraging them to do a fair deal. So, I think we should do something just after we find the results of the vote.
I will weigh in now, and then I'll wait for the council either to do a note and file and have this come back. I only proceed cautious with this as an elected body that should stay neutral. I think at this point right now, we should stay clear and let labor and the other folks deal. Right now, I am worried because this will affect us in our post-production. So the merits I agree with, but as an elected body, this is an international, strike across the country, and to only receive one letter who's telling us not to support it and basically stay out of it, they're working it through. I think that's probably the best way we as a city council should do, because what's going to happen when the next labor group comes to us and they want our support? I think we have to be very cautious of how we move forward. If it was a stalemate right now, and I would believe that our letter shouldn't go in a big pile. Our letter as an elected body is that the city of Burbank, representing its people, is taking an official position on a labor issue. And I think that without really having more substance, I mean, did you talk to the president of this organization, of this labor group?
I've talked to some IATSE members, and I talked to a few people who work for the Producers Alliance. For me, I mean, staying out of it is different than staying neutral. I think a neutral stance would be sending a letter to both groups. That's what I believe.
Well, I will have to agree with Councilmember Springer and Councilmember Schultz that I think at this point in time, again, I just, usually when a president of a union should be getting a hold of the mayor and asking for their support, usually. I mean, because it's at that level. But just to throw a letter to put it in a pile, I can't support that. So if somebody would like to make a motion, note and file, or whatever suggestion would like, I agree with the other two council members that we should wait and see what happens. Let the labor group, especially because we have a letter from them. That's all the letter we got. And it says stay out of it.
If it's okay, I'd like to move that we bring this back if negotiations fall through.
Well, make a motion, see if you get a second.
Okay, I'll move that we bring back this consideration of a letter until after the vote by members to either ratify or deny the current deal.
Dies for lack of Councilmember Schultz.
I have a point of order more than anything. Forgive me, but so would the motion essentially be to note and file, but reserve the opportunity to bring it back at a later date to revisit the issue if negotiations fail?
I see our city attorney is going to give me her. No.
I was going to say, I think what he's been saying, so I was going to clarify the motion, which might answer your question, is I believe what Councilmember Anthony was saying was he's making a motion to bring it to a second step if the ratification fails for consideration of doing a letter. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, and then that way, if the vote goes through, it doesn't come back. But
Right.
if it does for whatever reason not go through, and we're looking at a possible strike, honestly, I'd like to weigh in at that point.
Okay, so we still have a motion on the floor. Now that's been clarified. Do we have a second to move this forward? Seeing none, as mayor, I declare it dead. Is there another motion, or can we just do a note and file? Councilmember Schultz?
You don't really need to do anything.
Okay. If I don't see a motion for anything else, then I, as mayor, will declare this note and file. Moving on. Thank you very much, Councilmember Anthony. Thank you. Okay, this is the time for brief council comments, including reporting on council committee assignments. Who would like to go first? Councilmember Schultz, thanks for volunteering.
You got it, Your Honor. So really quick report. Friday, October 15th, I had a chance to attend a ribbon cutting at Milano Cafe. That's at the corner of 3rd and Palm, and I just wanted to give them a shout out. Excellent Italian food. Also, a really great addition to downtown. It has a little market, and you're gonna be able to walk in and purchase, items that you can prepare right at home. So for all of our residents who are living downtown, I think it's just a really exciting addition to our downtown Burbank business community. That night, I also joined, I think, all of my colleagues at the Burbank Arts and Education Foundation Impact Celebration. Really terrific event and a good opportunity to see our colleagues on the school board and continue conversations of a social nature. Monday, October 18th, with the mayor, I was a liaison to the Sustainable Burbank Commission. The one item of note is they had a really great presentation by the Burbank Recycle Center, updates on Senate Bill 1383. So you can reach out to the head of the Recycle Center and I'm sure get a copy of that presentation, but very, very informative stuff. Tuesday, October 19th, I had a chance to attend the YMCA Social Impact Center Drag Queen Story Time. Wednesday, October 20th, I was at the Mayor's State of the City. Mr. Mayor, again, excellent presentation. You might have won yourself another Emmy. We'll see. And lastly, the same night, I was liaison for the Police Commission meeting. They had some, and I encourage all of our council members to go back and watch the meeting. They had great reports and updates on the recruitment and hiring of our BPD officers, street racing statistics, and BPD's response to that, which is very timely, and a great discussion about furthering community engagement and participation in our police commission. So if you get a chance to watch that back, I'd encourage you to do so. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Schultz. Councilmember Anthony?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did attend the Mayor's State of the City address. That was very fun and entertaining. Stop motion Mayor Frutos was very exciting to see. That same morning, though, I went to the Netflix building down in LA on Vine Street. I joined in what was called a walkout, a protest for the streaming service. Just their executive board had made some disparaging comments about the LGBTQ community, and employees were miffed, and they put together a walkout there. And we have a lot of Netflix employees here in Burbank, and I just want them to know that, that there are people who do not appreciate folks getting fired simply because of who they love and what their gender is, that kind of thing. So it's important to make sure that people hear that. On Friday, I attended a memorial service for Edith Franke, one of the last remaining survivors of the Holocaust. Edith actually did a number of speaking tours in Burbank high schools. She did a lot in Glendale and LA, and she was one of the key speakers in the speaker series for the Holocaust Memorial. And she spent a lot of her final years talking to high school students about what the Holocaust was and what happened to her family and all of that stuff, and became sort of a living history for these kids. I did see her speak once at a Holocaust memorial, and it was powerful to watch this tiny lady put those stories to a face, to a real person. And then on Sunday, I attended the candlelight vigil for Helena Hutchins, who was the camera operator in New Mexico, who passed away on set through a stunt involving Alec Baldwin, and there was safety issues and concerns. The turnout was huge. There was a couple hundred people there, and the most of the people there were concerned with safety on set and the use of people who hadn't been cleared to work, new folks coming in to take over jobs that other people had walked away from because of the safety issues. It was a really galvanizing moment, I think, for a lot of people. So we'll see if that affects any of the negotiations moving forward with all of those union workers and on set and for the film production staff. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it. Sorry for having such a downer week. I hope the rest of you had a more enjoyable time.
Thank you, Councilmember Anthony, especially representing us and attending the memorial service. Thank you for your time on that one. Okay, Councilmember Springer.
Yes, thank you. I attended League of Cal Cities roundtable, and that was focused on economic development. I met with the ANCA for the first time since before the pandemic, and it was really nice to see them. I attended the Parks and Rec board meeting and also the ribbon cutting for Milano and the Boys and Girls Club bingo and poker night, as well as the Burbank Arts and Education Foundation celebration. And I took some residents on a field trip of Bus Rapid Transit's Orange Line, and because they had never been on BRT before. And I took them on the pink route to the red line to the orange line and then back, so they would have an idea. And I also took them across the Olive Bridge, which is a real experience on foot. And I saw all of you at the State of the City, and it was fun, and it was great information. And I was a panelist on the Women of Influence for Business Life magazine. And I have to say that I'm inspired by the honorees, and City Attorney Amy Albano is one of them. A shout out to Miss Albano. The luncheon is coming up next week. And so also inspired by the panelists. And a ribbon cutting for RW Magic at the Chamber. And that was very cool. He was, RW is a great magician. And also the Empty Bowl at St. Francis Xavier, and had some really tasty soup. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Madam Springer. Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few items. I attended the Burbank Cultural Arts Commission meeting. I also attended the ribbon cutting at Milano Cafe. If you get a chance, those who haven't been there, stop by. It's a real nice little cafe with it, like it was mentioned, little grocery store. I attended a SUE meeting that dealt with drug use prevention strategies. Mayor, State of the City, goes without saying, it was awesome again, once more. Congratulations, Mr. Mayor. And the mayor and I met a couple of times with Justin and our city attorney candidate to discuss just issues going forward. So that was twice we met with them. Let's see. And we also had a Zoom meeting, the mayor and I, with city manager, city attorney, Patrick Prescott, and Frank Miller. He wasn't there, the CEO of the airport, but our airport commissioners were in attendance. That's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Back on Friday, October the 15th, I attended a Joy of Assisted Living grand opening. And then I also attended the Boys and Girls Club 16th Annual Poker and Bingo Tournament with Councilmember Springer. And then I also attended the Burbank Arts and Education Foundation Impact Celebration. And then on, obviously, Wednesday, I want to thank everybody. We had over 400 people that were interested to see where we as a council are leading our city and, you know, what is going on. So I was pleasantly surprised, because we didn't have one last year, how many folks turned out. But I appreciate the accolades, colleagues, but I was out there representing the five of us collaboratively together. And you provided me the insight and energy to get our message of our goals and our policies, and every Tuesday night working for the benefit of the people of Burbank. And I appreciate you guys very much. Thank you for the accolades. And then I also attended the Zoom meeting for a subcommittee meeting with the Vice Mayor and myself in the airport. And I wanted to publicly acknowledge former Mayor and current Airport Commissioner Emily Gabeletti for now being one of the officers within the authority on the board. And I do appreciate the current Airport Authority member Don Brown for allowing this unique opportunity, but most important, sharing his wisdom with the former mayor and current authority member Emily Gabeletti in the transition to get her up to speed on where he's at, because he's a valuable, key, experienced member of the board. And then I also wanted to publicly acknowledge I call him Burbank's personal TMZ, Mr. Ross Benson. His mother passed away, and I was too tied up preparing for the council meeting tonight, but today she was laid to rest. And my condolences on behalf of the council right now are with you, Ross. You're our friend. You're the subject matter historian of the city of Burbank. But we, the five members of council, wanted to express our condolences. Today's a tough day for you. But we love you, Ross. Thank you. And may your mom rest her soul in peace. And then I also wanted to thank Superintendent Matt Hill, Board President Steve Frittner, and I believe I was told I did not have time to shake her hand and welcome her to the State of the City, but I believe that Ms. Tabbitt was also there. I see a nod, she was. But thank you for attending and having that interest and partnership with the City Council and obviously your city. Okay, let's move on for the introduction of additional agenda items. Do members of the council have any agenda items to introduce? Going once? Wow, going twice. Man, maybe because our city attorney is retiring, we're trying to be nice. But I have agenda items. Mr. City Manager, I don't know when it's appropriate, so I kind of leave it up to you. But I believe with all the emails that we've been getting regarding the Olive bus route, I would like to see if maybe as a council, we can find consensus, what I'm hearing, that maybe we should also officially discuss and write a letter of what our position is and what we want or don't want officially to remind the board where we're at, because we haven't really sent in an official letter as a council. Maybe views have changed, but because of the amount of emails, don't know if we can put that on an agenda item. What are your thoughts?
Sure. We actually have submitted a letter with our comments about a year ago.
Okay.
And like I said, we can, during city manager comments next week, we can provide a brief update with comments on where residents can send their concerns. And then also our plan is once the final environmental impact report is completed at the end of the year, that we would come back and have you do another opportunity to provide input to the Metro Board.
Disregard that agenda item request. Can we add to the agenda item that's coming back regarding 35, if we can add Portantino's letter to that discussion when it comes back?
That is coming back next week.
Can that letter be part of that agenda item, or does it have to be a standalone future agenda item?
So maybe I can clarify a little bit. The plan is to discuss, at the end of the last time when we talked about SB 35, we were asked to bring some information back. So the staff report talks about, is really about the ordinance that the council, we discussed, but it also has a part about SB 35 and the site and what SB 35 says. So I think it's fine for us to discuss what is or isn't and what that means. And so I don't think the intent would be to include the letter per se, but a discussion would ensue because of the rest of that agenda item.
How can we get that letter put into the official file so the public?
Well, we can, if that's what council wishes, we can add that. It would come in with all our other information that would go to council.
Okay, no discussion, council. We cannot discuss it, but by a show of hands, if the majority feels, can we add that letter?
Well, I'm saying it would be relevant. We're happy to add it. It's not.
Okay.
It's just how it comes to you.
Okay, I like to see it added for the public record, so the
Right.
public can see it when the agenda items comes for discussion. Okay, great. I don't know if when we can do this agenda item, but I would like to have a discussion regarding the outdoor dining for the restaurants that are outside of the downtown Peabody area.
Do you mean the parklets, Mr.
No,
Mayor?
these are the restaurants that have set up their outdoor dining in their parking lots. I know some of those owners have contacted me, and where we're going to go as a city to allow them to stay, or I'd like to have a council agenda item on that. Not the parklets, not creating new ones, but the existing tents that are up that people are doing outdoor dining. I'd like to know in a future agenda item for that discussion to see if we're going to make it permanent or not.
Excuse me, Mayor Frutos?
Yes.
Can you include the potential for parklets in some of those other locations
I
while you're adding it as an agenda item?
I believe if I heard it right, parklets have to be separate from the tents, or if they can be included. Mr. City Manager, I'll let you kind of.
If you want parklets, we could add parklets.
Okay, perfect.
If you're just looking for an update on outdoor dining, we could provide an update on the outdoor dining citywide.
Well,
I thought, so not to contradict
Yeah.
anybody, I believe that Ms. Sanzoyan, when she spoke, said they're going to be bringing it back because we did
for the
have some,
parklets.
no.
Can I
The opposite.
insert, we're going to bring something back, but I would request if you want us to talk about parklets, that we can do it as two separate items.
Perfect.
Just to keep it cleaner, because it's two different issues, and one will have a lot of discussion, the other shouldn't have a lot, I think.
Okay.
Right, and that was my point, is they were already bringing back the outdoor dining in parking lots and citywide dining because of, those were urgency ordinances by the council.
Okay.
And looking at those again, because we put certain dates and things aren't quite what we thought they'd be.
Okay.
And then the parklets would have to be a separate, as just
Okay,
said.
if I can ask it, if they can come back at two separate council meetings, because the last time we did this, it got really confusing. So I'd rather keep it separate, so one meeting is one, the next meeting is the other.
Separate items, we got it.
Please, okay. All right, I think that's enough. Oh,
Mr.
Councilmember
Mayor, Could I
Anthony.
ask a question real quick? Madam City Attorney, the letter in the previous thing that the mayor mentioned that we're bringing back, that's from a year ago? Is that what? No.
It's a recent letter from Senator Portantino.
No, I think, is he talking about that letter or the Metro letter?
The Metro letter.
The Metro letter.
That was a year ago.
When that comes back, are Councilmember Schultz and myself able to amend some of those?
You know what, that's a
Language is
discussion
in there.
now. Let's wait till the agenda item comes back. But you're more than welcome to call the city attorney tomorrow or the next day and ask that question, but I can't do it during this time.
Oh, okay.
Can I bring something up?
If it's an agenda item, yes, no more discussion on these items.
No, it's not an agenda item.
Careful.
I don't know if Mr. Krisky is still here, but he answered some questions that I had received from the community, and that should go out to other council members. It might be clarifying.
Okay, can I ask you to follow up with the city manager tomorrow? Because it's kind of confusing what letter. Okay, if there's no more agenda items, council, let's close this part. We will now adjourn to Tuesday, November the 2nd, 2021, for a regular meeting. The public may view the meeting online or on television and will be able to provide public comment on the following three ways: by leaving an e-comment on the city's website, burbankca.gov/e-comments, by emailing the city council directly at citycouncil@burbankca.gov, or by calling in directly to the council meeting at 818-238-3335. I want everybody to have a very safe and fun Halloween night, Sunday night, trick or treat. Moms and dads, please inspect that candy. And if you don't want to go door to door and you're worried, please, we have some groovy activities for the ghouls and gals on the 31st at our public parks. But I want to wish everybody a very, very happy trick or treat Halloween. This court is now adjourned. Good night, everybody.